And we're back. We're back for the afternoon session of the Twilight Zone case that is the Karen Reed trial of Norfolk, Mass. I feel like I'm the one who's been talking all morning, you guys. So I want to hear from you. The fan is up right now. Only fans so far in Dedham. I want to hear from you what you think the most explosive part of the testimony was this morning. What say you? The song that just played during my countdown is Zydeco. Some of the YouTube free music that they allow you to use without a license. If you use anything else that's like a name, if I used Real Little Feet or something, they would strike me. So that'd be that. I have an echo. Does anybody think I have an echo, or does one person think I have an echo? Maybe if you think I have an echo, you need to go back and come back in. Perhaps that could be the problem. Sometimes it happens. It helps if you refresh your browser. Somebody else said they thought that I was buffering earlier, but it's not me. It's you. I'm sorry. It's not me. It's you. Just refresh your browser. Sometimes if you go out and come back in, it helps. Okay. Okay. The taillight was pretty shocking. Says Karina. Yeah. Didn't he say it shattered? Uh-huh. Shattering of the taillight and the Sally port, says Team Brittany, coming to light was pretty sweet. How about the fact that Lieutenant Paul Gallagher was only interviewed in April of 2024 for the first time ever? Why? Ask yourself that. Why? Why was Gallagher only interviewed for the first time in April of 2024? He was one of the first responders to the scene. Are you kidding me? Shoddy police investigation doesn't even begin to describe this, my friends. Hello, Deanna. Deanna says, hello, Mel, new to your channel. Welcome. Welcome, Deanna. Introduce yourself to everyone in the chat. They'll be so happy to have you. And everyone here is very welcoming. And if you don't understand something and you're new to the case, ask a question. Those in the chat will be happy to answer it for you. There are no stupid questions. There are no dumb questions. Feel free to ask, because we have been through this case with a fine-tooth comb. We have been going over every single document we could get our hands on, all investigative reports, all the motions, all the court hearings. So we know a lot more about this case than a lot of people who are new to this case. So if you have questions, please ask. People will be happy to answer you. Don't feel silly asking a question. You got to go out too, maybe YouTube. I don't know. It could be. Go out, come back in. Make sure to like on your way back in. Helps the algorithm and all. Hi, Patty. Oh, you want to do casting? Patty wants to cast the movie. Who's going to play who? All right. Give me some... let's start with the judge. Let's start with the judge. Give me some suggestions, and then we could run a poll. Somebody had suggested the other day Kathy Bates. You put that in there. So Kathy Bates. Somebody had suggested, I forget who the next, Joan Cusack. All right, we'll go with that. Amy Schumer. Might be a little young, but I want to say Judge Cannoni is in her 60s. She definitely is, because I think we looked at Meryl Streep. All right, good. Meryl Streep can really, she's like a chameleon. She can play anyone. Jennifer's most shocking testimony is that, most shocking part of the day is the fact that proper procedure for this department is contamination of a crime scene. Yeah, you should be outraged. Ellen Barkin for the, I love Ellen Barkin. What happened to Ellen Barkin? All right, they're coming back up. Cameras up. I'll still take recommendations.
Be seated, court is in session.
Thank you. All right, Sergeant Goode, please.
Sergeant Goode, please. Too many tabs open, as always. She has not been as smiley during this entire pendency of this case. She has been with the jury, and she's breathing again. I'd like some sigh
Mr. Allman,
emojis
you're still under oath.
in the chat, please.
Okay. All right, Mr. Lally, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Whenever you're ready.
So, Sergeant, resuming with what is, excuse me, just been marked as Exhibit 41, that's the cruiser camera video from your cruiser 682 that you were driving that day. Is that correct?
Yes.
And Ms. Gilman, if you could, with the court's permission, I'd like to publish some of that video.
Okay.
Ms. Gilman, if you could start from the beginning through about 4 minutes and 30 seconds.
All right, so this is dash cam footage. The top of this is cut off, but it looks like it says January 29, 2022. I can't read it. I think it's 6/13. Oh, now they're moving it down. 6/13/10.
Ms. Gilman, can you pause it just 1 second? Sergeant, if you could, as the video is playing along, if you could just alert the jury to the portion of the video where you observe yourself sort of pulling on to Fairview Road.
Yes.
And Ms. Gilman, if you could, when the sergeant does that, if you could just pause it. Okay.
There's no audio on this. Everyone smash the like on your way in. Put your DNA on that the like button. Canton PD won't get it, or MSP, I promise you. It's snowing. Somebody said, why would you choose that route to Fairview? I'm guessing that you live in the area. That's interesting. Thanks, M.
All right, we're coming up to Fairview right now.
He's not supposed to narrate.
It's
The witness-
spring.
The witness is not allowed to narrate the
Just wanna-
video, Your Honor. There's no question on the table, Your Honor.
That's Fairview right there on the right.
Pause it just then. Sergeant Goode, if I could take you back just to the right that you took just before that. What street are you on right now?
That's Chapman Street.
And was that Washington Street that you would turn to get onto Chapman?
Correct.
Can I ask you, when you're turning from Washington Street onto Chapman, are there any sort of businesses or sort of landmarks on your right or your left as you're making that turn?
So on the right-hand side, as you're turning onto Chapman, that's going to be Cassie's Corner Store. And on the left at the intersection is, used to be called Temple Beth Abraham. I believe it's Temple Bin Bar something. I don't know the actual name, but.
So there's Temple on your left and Cassie's on your right?
Correct.
And so it's
Laying foundation for the temple video that they're going to try and get into evidence. If you know, you know. I want to know what goes on at Cassie's Corner. Can anyone tell me what goes on at Cassie's Corner? I'm interested.
this point in the video here is about when you're about to turn on to Fairfield, correct?
Yes.
Just a minute, if you could.
Thanks, Ashley. It's a small corner store, Cassie's Corner. Very quiet inside his car. There's nothing. You can't even hear the windshield wipers. We're back. We're back, Robin. You didn't miss too much. It is now 6:15 and 40 seconds. This is the dash cam of Sergeant Sean Goode responding to the scene. Yes, he is the officer who says he's going to section her. You're right. And I think he's going to say that around 6:30. Thank you so much for pointing that out. D. Okay, who do we see? We see Saraf. I'm pausing this for a second because we have that ability. We have that ability. So I see Saraf. I see Karen. I spy Katie in this yellow and red jacket. For those of you who are upset about the volume, I'm moving my mic a little further away from myself. There's not a lot I can do with modulation because some people in the courtroom have a mic, some don't. Some are going to be at my volume, some others will not be. Okay, here he is pulling up to the scene. Okay. Katie in the yellow and red jacket. Karen to her right, or to the right of your screen. Sergeant Saraf to the right of Karen. With the fur on the hood is Kerry, right behind the tailgate of that white car, which is Kerry's car. And this is Jen McCabe talking to, or it looks like she's talking to Katie McLaughlin. Who just walked into frame.
You want to keep the pause right there? Can I approach the witness room?
Yes.
It was
So, sir, Sergeant, there's a point here.
okay.
If I could, Sergeant, just ask you to, within this sort of still frame up here on the screen, do you recognize people that are depicted within this still frame of this video?
Yes.
And if, to whatever extent you do recognize people, if you could, using the laser pointer, draw the jury's attention to whom you recognize.
All right. That's going to be myself. Right there is going to be firefighter McLaughlin. That's going to be Miss Reed. And if you played it another second, I believe that's going to be Miss McCabe, or if not, Miss Roberts.
Ms. Gilman, if you could.
So that's him. That answered our question.
Ms. Gilman. The gentleman you see sort of behind you in the frame, Sergeant, do you recognize who that is?
Yes, that's Officer Saraf.
My apologies, Ms. Gilman. You can run. You can take that down. Thank you very much. And so, Sergeant, you arrive on scene in that area. First of all, what's contained in that video? Is that a fair and accurate portrayal of what you observed as far as the weather conditions outside that day?
Yes.
And when you arrive on scene, who, if anyone, is it that you speak to first?
Initially, I walked up to Officer Saraf. I said probably some version of what's going on. Officer O'Keefe was already in the ambulance, and then I just began to try to talk to anybody and anybody.
And so the ambulance.
I just want to take that back because I want to see the timestamp on that, because we know that the ambulance was in transit to the hospital at 6:27. So this is at 6:16:35. So I think he was loaded into the ambulance at 6:14, if my memory serves. Is the ambulance still on scene at this point? Let's see what he has to say about that.
Portrayal of what you observed as far as the weather conditions outside that day?
Yes.
And when you arrive on scene, who, if anyone, is it that you speak to first?
Initially, I walked up to Officer Saraf. I said probably some version of what's going on. Officer O'Keefe was already in the ambulance, and then I just began to try to talk to anybody and anybody.
And so the ambulance is still on scene when you arrive, is that correct?
Yes.
Officer O'Keefe is in the back of the ambulance, is that
Yeah.
correct?
Yes.
And at some point when you're speaking with Officer Saraf, does he direct your attention to where Officer O'Keefe was prior to being placed in the ambulance?
Yes.
Where did he direct your attention?
If you're looking at the house, it'd be left-hand side, slightly probably right in front of the flagpole.
And about how far off of the roadway would you estimate that was?
I would say 8 to 10 feet off the curb.
Now, speaking to other people without reference to necessarily what was said to you, following your conversation with Officer Saraf, who, if anyone, you speak to next?
I believe the first person I could really get a statement from was Miss McCabe.
And when you say first person you could really get a statement from, what do you mean by that?
It was a chaotic scene. People just kind of walking in and out. And so Miss McCabe was the first one that was able to give me a good statement of how they ended up here.
Following your conversation with Ms. McCabe, who, if anyone, did you speak to next?
Next was Miss Reed.
And just to be clear, when we speak about Ms. Reed, you see her in the courtroom today?
I do.
Just identify as to where she's seated or an article of clothing she's wearing.
She's sitting between Mr. Jackson and Mr. Yannetti.
I'll just ask the record to reflect identification.
Okay.
Now, when you're on,
Interesting that he knows defense counsel's name. Names, officer. I mean, she's sitting in between Jackson and Yannetti. How does he know that? Has he been watching coverage on YouTube of this case? Because I'm going to submit to you that he definitely doesn't know who Alan Jackson is, because Alan Jackson doesn't even practice in Massachusetts. He's from California. Maybe he knows Mr. Yannetti from being in court with him before, being cross-examined by him before, but that was kind of interesting. Lally did refer to him as officer one time, and then he corrected himself quickly and said, "I'm sorry, Mr. O'Keefe." I don't know if anybody else has called Officer O'Keefe officer.
Seeing in your speaking to these individuals, what if any impact did the weather have as far as your ability to sort of hear things that weren't direct conversations you were involved with?
You couldn't hear. It was oddly eerily quiet, but the wind was so howling that I had a tough time actually hearing people. So you had to speak very loud or get next to each other.
Wow, he had a hard time hearing. So is it possible that when you think that you heard her say, "I hit him, I hit him, I hit him," what she was saying was, "Did I hit him? Did I hit him?" Because the wind was so loud, you couldn't actually hear anyone. I think that whoever is going to cross-examine him is going to use that against him. So there's that.
And as far as your conversation with the defendant, Ms. Reed, what, if anything, did you ask her, or what, if any, response did she give?
So I walked Miss Reed to the back of 682. She was obviously cold. Got her in the back of the car, put the heat on, asked her, how did she end up here? How did her boyfriend end up here? She says, "I don't know."
Prior to placing her in the back of the cruiser, how would you describe her sort of demeanor outside?
Confused, hysterical, shock.
What, if anything, was she saying or asking in regard to Mr. O'Keefe prior to you putting her in the back of the cruiser?
She was yelling out, "Is he dead?"
And is that something she said once, more than once, or something?
Numerous times.
And about how loudly was she saying?
Oh, she was yelling it.
And so once back in the cruiser, you asked her some questions after she said, "I don't know." What, if anything, else did you ask her that?
I asked her if she had driven there, and she said, "I think so." And then right after that, she said, "I don't remember." Because of her state, I decided to stop questioning there. She couldn't keep her train of thought.
Now, you had notified Detective Sergeant Lank and Lieutenant Gallagher prior to your going to the scene. Is that correct?
Yes.
About what time was it that either or both of them arrived?
Detective Sergeant Lank probably got there at about 6:20, 6:25. I immediately briefed him what we had, what was going on so far. And
about what time did Lieutenant Gallagher?
I believe Lieutenant Gallagher probably came in right around 7 a.m.
Now, following your conversation with the defendant, who, if anyone else, did you speak to on?
Then I spoke to the other party, Miss Roberts.
If you know, about how long a period of conversation are we talking about with respect to Ms. McCabe and Ms. Roberts?
Each interview,
Yes.
couple minutes.
And why was it only a couple minutes?
It was a pretty quick statement. It seemed like they were only in the car for a very short amount of
Objection,
time.
move to strike.
All right. So we'll strike after. It was a pretty quick statement. Next question.
Now, with regard to Lieutenant Ms. Reed, after you had that brief conversation with her at the back of your cruiser, where did you go? Where did she go?
I believe she, at some point, we let her back outside of the car. We never closed the door on her because I was stood in the door frame with my head in the back seat. She got out. She kind of just did her own thing, paced up and back between talking to either Miss Roberts or Miss McCabe, yelling out.
And at some point, did the ambulance and Miss Officer O'Keefe was in, did that leave the scene?
It did.
And following that, what, if anything, did you say or do with reference to the defendant?
Once the Officer O'Keefe was transported, Miss Reed just was not listening to any directions. We were trying to keep her in Miss Roberts' car to stay warm. She's going back and forth. I finally told Miss Roberts, we have everybody's information. She's not needed here anymore. Go home, get warm. We'll reach out if we have to.
So he thought she was okay to leave the scene. He dismissed her from the scene, told her to take her home and get her warm.
Shortly after, and at that point, did Miss Roberts take Miss Reed?
She did.
And what, if anything, happened next on scene with regard to Miss Reed?
It was moments later. I got a radio transmission from our officer at the working dispatch that Mr. Reed, her father, was on the phone with Miss Reed, and she was making suicidal threats to take her own life.
And based on that,
Okay, so that answers our question. It seems that Mr. Reed called dispatch to say that Karen was on the phone with him threatening suicide, and he must have called Canton PD to see if they would bring her to the hospital. We have not known until this time who called Canton PD and said that Karen was suicidal or potentially suicidal.
that information that you received, what, if anything, did you do in regard to that?
Well, once our Officer Dever, who didn't even know that we had Miss Reed at the scene, she radioed to us to confirm that did we have a Karen party on scene. I said we did. She explained that her father was frantic on the phone, and Miss Reed was stating that she wanted to end her life, and he, in quotes, said he wanted her to be in protective custody. So at that time, I knew that we'd be able to get a hold of her because I had all the information. I believe I just called Miss Roberts' phone, told her to bring her back to the scene.
And about how long was it after you spoke to Miss?
Okay, so Mr. Reed was frantic. He called dispatch or Canton PD, or maybe he called his local police department and asked to transfer to Canton PD. I'm not quite sure. It's not really clear. But as we know from Officer Saraf, the dispatch records and the logs at the Canton PD are not accurate, and it's really not important that they are. We'll see if that log comes into evidence. So apparently Mr. Reed called, and this officer says that he was frantic, that Karen was on the phone with him and said that she wanted to end her life, which is what Goode just testified to, and that he wanted her in protective custody. So Officer Goode says or Sergeant Goode says that he had Carrie Roberts' phone number, I guess, on his pad. Maybe he took notes. And so he called her back to the scene.
Miss Roberts, that they returned?
They couldn't have gotten very far, especially in the road conditions.
And then based on those statements that were reported to you from the dispatch from defendant's father, what, if anything, did you do with regard to Miss Reed?
I told Officer Mullaney, who was on scene, most of our patrolmen have, it's called Section 12.
Did you see the closed caption said Officer Melanie? Officer Melanie. No, it's Officer Mullaney. He's already testified. Mullaney for the Section 12 paperwork.
Inside of all of our cruisers. Just for that reason, I advised him to fill out the proper paperwork, and we were going to section Miss Reed to the hospital for mental evaluation.
And what is in Section 12 from your perspective?
It's a tool for police officers when you come on scene with someone that's having either a mental breakdown, claiming that they want to hurt themselves, anything like that. We have the power as police officers to fill out the proper paperwork. We're not medical professionals. Let a doctor determine if she does need medical help. And if she doesn't want to go, or him, that paperwork allows us to actually physically put her on a stretcher and send her to the hospital. Once she gets to the hospital, it's up to the doctors there to do their due diligence. And if they deem that she's not mentally unstable, then she's released. But at least it's off of us.
At least it's off of us, he
Now-
said. At least it's off of us. We do what we got to do. We do what we got to do, and then at least it's off of us. We did our part. We sectioned somebody involuntarily, even though he just dismissed her, saying that he thought she was in grief, shock, and in fact, he said he couldn't even take a statement from her because she was so distraught. He didn't think questioning her would be fruitful at all. But at least it'd be off us.
The time that Ms. Reed returns to the scene, the fire department, being the ambulance and the engine, have already left. Is that correct?
Yes, correct.
And then going to apparatus from the fire department come back in reference to section 12.
Correct. So I believe this group was from Station 2, which is the other fire station in the town of Canton. They arrived on scene.
And during that time in between, who arrives first, the fire department or Ms. Roberts with Ms. Reed?
Miss Roberts.
And during that time, after Ms. Roberts arrives with Ms. Reed and prior to the fire department arriving, what, if any, interaction did you have with Ms. Reed during that time?
None.
And then once the fire department returns on scene, what, if anything, do you direct them to with regard to Ms. Reed and with regard to the paperwork you had Officer Mulaney fill out?
Officer Mulaney and Officer Sarif, and looks like in the video, escort Miss Reed to the ambulance, and she's safely transported to the hospital. Our officer back at dispatch called back Mr. Reed, advised her that his daughter was safe.
And then turning back to the scene, following Detective Sergeant Lank's arrival, what, if any, where, if anywhere, did you and Detective Sergeant Lank go on scene following that?
So when we were waiting for the fire truck to arrive, we noticed that the lights went on at 34 Fairview. We needed to obviously speak to the homeowners. I told Sergeant Lank at the time, I believe he was on the phone with CPAC for the state police. I said, the lights just went on the front door. Let's go speak to the homeowners. And we both walked in.
So they felt okay now because the lights went on, so they knew everybody was awake. So they felt that now would be a good time. It's okay to knock on the door of the house that the dead man was just found on. And now that they're awake, it's cool. We can go in and talk to them. What? You really? Yeah. Hi, Nick Sorrow. Thanks for your super chat. Did he spray tan his face before taking the stand? He forgot his forehead. Yeah, I think also thanks. I think the lights are shining on him. Sometimes the lights are shining on me. Sometimes I can barely see. Lately, it occurs to me what a long, strange trip it's been. Thank you, Mrs. Bucket, for your super sticker, and Boho Chic. Thanks for your super sticker. I'm going to keep on top of these this time so they don't all collect until the end. It's okay now. They're awake. Let's go. We can go in now. Lights are on.
You actually physically walked into the house, is that correct?
Yes.
With respect to prior to you seeing sort of the house lights go on at 34 Fairview, had you seen anybody go into or out of that residence while you were there?
Yes. At some point, either myself or Sergeant Lank told Miss McCabe that she needs to wake up the homeowners. We need to speak to them.
And why did you say that specifically to Ms. McCabe?
We have no idea why John O'Keefe is laying on the front lawn of a house. We have no idea. The statements from the three people, we need to figure out what happened that night.
Yeah, but I wonder if he thought it would be important to search the house. I want to know if he says that Jen McCabe called the house, because we know that she did. So hang on.
We noticed that the lights went on at 34 Fairview. We needed to obviously speak to the homeowners. I told Sergeant Lank at the time, I believe he was on the phone with CPAC for the state police. I said, the lights just went on the front door. Let's go speak to the homeowners. And we both walked in.
We obviously
You
needed to.
physically walked into the house, is that correct?
Yes.
With respect to prior to you seeing sort of the house lights go on at 34 Fairview, had you seen anybody go into or out of that residence while you were there?
Yes. At some point, either myself or Sergeant Lank told Miss McCabe that she needs to wake up the homeowners. We need to speak to them.
Oh, gee, do you think he was prepped after the video came out of Jen McCabe sneaking into the house? Because he's saying now he told her to go inside and wake them up. So he knew that it was her sister's house, apparently. No, somebody's saying, is this live? Yeah, this is live. We are in the afternoon session of day 5. Sergeant Goode is still on the stand under direct examination. And he's trying to clean up the report or the video that we saw of Jen McCabe sneaking into the house. He's saying he told her to go in and wake him up. Wow. Okay. Lally's been prepping overtime.
With respect to prior to you seeing sort of the house lights go on at 34 Fairview,
The house
had you
lights.
seen anybody go into or out of that residence while you were there?
Yes. At some point, either myself or Sergeant Lank told Miss McCabe that she needs to wake up the homeowners. We need to speak to them.
Oh, him or Lank. He doesn't remember.
Why did you say that specifically to Ms. McCabe?
We have no idea why John O'Keefe is laying on the front lawn of a house. We have no idea. The statements from the 3 people, we need to figure out what happened that night.
And so I guess my question is more why Ms. McCabe versus somebody else?
Miss McCabe is the sister-in-law of the homeowner, so she would.
Okay. All right. Am I getting testy here? Miss McCabe is the sister of the homeowner. Her sister, Nicole, is married to Brian. Do they own the house together? Why is it that it's the man who owns the house here? Why is it only the man that's referred to as the homeowner? Okay. Nicole Albert, I'm assuming, is also on the deed to the house. So she also is the homeowner. Why are they trying to distance her from being the homeowner? The home is jointly held by husband and wife, I presume. And she's not the sister-in-law of the homeowner. She's the sister of the homeowner. Nicole. Nicole is her sister. Brian Albert isn't the only guy who owns the house. That really annoys me. And yeah, it would make sense because Lank knows the Alberts very well. He was a friendly. They called him personally to come down to the scene. So of course Lank knew whose house it was. I can't wait to see if this is in Sergeant Goode's report. Yeah, so she either had a key to the house or the doors are left unlocked, or maybe there's a keypad on the house and she knows the combo to get in. Of course they own the house together, right? Yeah, they own the house together, says Mike W. But yeah, but you know, she's just the sister-in-law of the homeowner because they're just, you know, in Canton, only the man owns the home. Guess what? It's 2024. Women can own homes too. In fact, some women own the whole house themselves. Ridiculous. Okay. Rant over. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
Be a friendly face to knock at the door at 6 o'clock in the morning in a blizzard.
Now, beyond anybody at 34 Fairview Road, again, before you observe those lights go on in the residence, from the other houses sort of on the street up and down, who, if anyone, did you observe come out of any of those houses?
Nobody.
And was that something that continued throughout the time that you were on scene?
Correct.
So how long were you on scene for in total?
Looking at the log, we were there for almost exactly 2 hours.
And so during those 2 hours, no one from any of the houses on the street came outside?
No, I mean, every emergency truck that showed up at 6 o'clock in the morning during a blizzard, there's no other cars on the road. So you're not coming down with sirens blaring, waking up an entire street, a neighborhood. There's no need for it. So it was just lights and flashing. And to be honest with you, you couldn't see very far. You know.
Lights and flashing. I can see clear through. Your eyes tell more than you mean them to. Anybody have a nosy neighbor? Anybody have a neighbor who's up at maybe 6 a.m. and might notice some flashing lights? And are you kidding me that nobody looked out the window? He said there was no reason to use lights and sirens. No reason for us to wake up the whole neighborhood. There's only a dead police officer on the lawn. But hey, we didn't want to use any sirens because we didn't want to wake anybody up. Excellent freeze frame on that. I'll use that for my thumbnail later. Are you kidding me? He's overcompensating. Yep, we did hear sirens in one of those calls. We absolutely did. Janie, we heard it. He's overcompensating. Connie owns her home outright. And Gabriella is that nosy neighbor. And so is that Leela dog. And Sim, you are all that nosy neighbor. Let's take that back, because there was no reason to wake everybody up in a blizzard at 6 a.m. No reason to wake up the entire street and use our sirens or anything. But we heard the sirens in the 911 tape. Did we not?
I mean, every
No. So how long were you on scene for in total?
looking at the log, we were there for almost exactly 2 hours.
And so during those 2 hours, no one from any of the houses on the street came outside?
No, I mean, every emergency truck that showed up at 6 o'clock in the morning during a blizzard, there's no other cars on the road. So you're not coming down with sirens blaring, waking up an entire street, a neighborhood. There's no need for it. So it was just lights and flashing. And to be honest with you, you couldn't see very far. You know.
So you and Detective Sergeant Lank go into the home at 34 Fairview, and who, if anyone, did you speak to in
Mr. Albert, Mrs. Albert, Brian, and Nicole.
And who, if anyone else, was present in the home when you spoke to them?
When I was in there, I know Jen was in there, but we didn't speak to her because we already spoke to her. But we just spoke to Brian and Nicole right in the front room.
Did he just call her Jen? No, he's calling her Jen, the witness, not Mrs. McCabe, not Ms. McCabe, not Jennifer McCabe, just Jen. Just Jen. Maybe we should make a shirt. Just Jen.
Present in the home when you spoke to them?
When I was in there, I know Jen was in there, but we didn't speak to her because we already spoke to her. But we just spoke to Brian and Nicole right in the front room.
Didn't separate them.
Now, you heard over the course of the 911 call from
Just spoke to Brian and Nicole. Brian, the homeowner, and Nicole, who, may or may not be his wife, or, ball and chain, or the broad that he lives with, because, she doesn't own the home in Canton. We just spoke to them in the front room because we already talked to Jen. Didn't separate them. You just found a dead police officer on his lawn. And yeah, yes, right, Bernie. Thank you, Bernie. Bernie. It's a dead man outside, yet they send a civilian into the house. The killer could have been in the house. They knew what had happened. He's lying. Wow.
From Ms. McCabe that she references that 34 Fairview is the Albert residence, correct?
Yes.
And did you know Brian Albert, or were you aware of who he was prior to going to the house that day?
I know of Brian Albert, yes.
I love him.
He's a brother of a coworker that I've worked with for 18 years.
And co-worker that you worked with for 18 years, who's that?
Detective Albert.
What's his first name?
Kevin.
And had you ever been to that house before?
No.
You ever been inside that house before?
No.
And when you go inside that day, it's Brian Albert, Nicole Albert, and Ms. McCabe, is that correct?
Yes.
And during the time that you were in there, do you recall seeing, or who, if anyone else, do you recall seeing in there besides those three people, yourself and Detective Sergeant?
Nobody. Detective Lank took the lead on speaking to Brian and Nicole Albert, and I kind of just moseyed in the front of the house, looked in the dining room.
He's just moseying around. Did he just say I'm just moseying around the front of the house? There's a dead police officer in an ambulance outside, and I'm just moseying around. Looked in the dining room. Let Lank take the lead because Lank's the friendly. He's got a longer relationship with the Alberts than I do because he inserts himself into investigations involving the Alberts, even though I myself have just admitted to you that I've been working with his brother Kev, Detective Kev Albert, for 18 years. Oh, an excellent freeze frame. Another excellent freeze frame. He must make this face a lot. I was just moseying around the front of the house. Just moseying. Gotta hear that again.
I took the lead on speaking to Brian and Nicole Albert, and I kind of just moseyed in the front of the house, looked in the dining room, and listened to what they said, what happened, they seemed like they were generally in shock that there was a
Objection.
They were genuinely in shock. Did they script this for him? Officer Good, what time yesterday did you get your script for today? Officer Good, how long did it take you to memorize your lines for today? Officer Good, are you off book, or do you need me to hand you the script? Did you highlight your portion? They were genuinely in shock that there was a dead man on their lawn. We're rewinding that because this is good. This is Good, and that's his name, Good. Oh my God, excuse the pun. Moseying. He was moseying in front of the house. Wow. Can't make this up, you guys. Why wasn't Chloe barking? I'd love to know that too. Yeah, is this real life?
and listen to what they said, what happened. They seemed like they were generally in shock that there was a
Objection.
Sustain. Next question, please.
If anything, did you observe about their demeanor when you spoke?
They looked like they just got woken up at 6 o'clock in the morning.
Huh.
And as far as you indicating that you're sort of looking or poking around the front area near the front door.
Poked around?
Yes.
No, he didn't
What,
say
if anything,
poked.
of note did you?
He didn't say poked. He said he was moseying around. Do we need to look that up and give you the Merriam-Webster dictionary definition of moseying around? He wasn't poking around. He wasn't looking for anything. He wasn't searching. He wasn't creating a crime scene. He wasn't, trying to get a search warrant. There was no probable cause, apparently, according to our last witness. But now, according to Lally, I just want to poke around. Again, my reference to Shakedown Street from yesterday, because, apparently nothing shaking on Shakedown Street. Just got to poke around.
And as far as you indicating that you're sort of looking or poking around the front area near the front door, correct?
Yes.
And what, if anything, of note did you observe inside the house when you did?
Nothing. Everything to be in order. It seemed like a normal house.
Normal house. Mm-hmm.
And following, if you know, about how long was that conversation in the house?
I would say 20, 25 minutes.
And following that conversation, where did you and Detective Sergeant Lank go?
At that time, we both left the residence, came outside, and at that time, Lieutenant Gallagher was arriving. We had like a little bit of a powwow, figured out what was going on, and I believe that's when we saw Jen McCabe's husband show up and walked in. And
How did you know that?
Again, you didn't know Jennifer McCabe prior to that day, correct?
no,
Did you know her husband prior to that? So after you saw her husband, who you now know to be your husband, walk in, what, if anything, did you and Detective Sergeant Lank?
Sergeant Lank ran back inside to get a statement from Mr. McCabe as well.
Do you think he ran or did he mosey?
I did not.
And after you have sort of the conversation between yourself, Detective Sergeant Lank, and Lieutenant Gallagher, what, if anything, did the three of you do from there?
Lieutenant Gallagher immediately said we need to seal off the area of where Officer Keith was located. We grabbed some crime scene tape, put around. He wanted to photograph the area as well.
And who, if anyone, grabbed the crime scene?
Myself.
And what, if anything, did you do?
I wrapped it around probably the flagpole tree and cruiser.
Probably.
It was hard to keep up just because the wind was blowing at such a good rate.
And then what, if anything, did you and the other officers do with respect to the area that was identified to you as where Mr. O'Keefe was on Officer Sarah's ride?
Lieutenant Gallagher noticed that the snow was coming down at such a good clip. We couldn't keep it clear, and he made the idea of anybody have a leaf blower, and I did. So I told him I'm not too far away from the house, so I shot back to my residence and grabbed my own.
He got his own leaf blower from home. He left the crime scene to go to his house to get his own damn leaf blower. You cannot make this up. Somebody said a leaf blower might do good. Hold on, Good. Hold on, Goody Good. Somebody said, even though it's super windy, you should go get your leaf blower. And so he, like a good Boy Scout that he is, you cannot make this up.
And what, if anything, did you do?
I wrapped it around probably the flagpole tree and cruiser. It was hard to keep up just because the wind was blowing at such a good rate.
And then what, if anything, did you and the other officers do with respect to the area that was identified to you as where Mr. O'Keefe was on Officer Sarah's ride?
Lieutenant Gallagher noticed that the snow was coming down at such a good clip. We couldn't keep it clear, and made the idea of anybody have a leaf blower, and I did. So I told him I'm not too far away from the house, so I shot back to my residence and grabbed my own.
He shot back. He's moseying in the
How
front
long
dining room,
period
but he
of time
shot
was
back
it
to his own residence.
sort of left to go get the leaf blower in the time that you arrived back?
No more than 5-7 minutes.
And once you arrived back at back in the area of 34 Fairview Road, what, if anything, happened there?
I started it up for Lieutenant Gallagher. He took it over, and it worked great.
It worked great.
Now,
It
with
worked
respect
great.
to,
Hold on.
that sort of implementation of the leaf
If it
blower,
was
what,
working so great, how come you didn't find any taillight pieces or a sneaker or a hat? The red ones, the red taillight pieces. It worked great. Don't go by the closed captions. We got to listen.
I started it up for Lieutenant Gallagher. He took it over, and it worked great.
Now, with respect to that sort of implementation of the leaf blower, what, if anything, did you or other officers do to sort of memorialize?
So as Lieutenant Gallagher was using the piece of equipment, I used my iPhone, videotaped it, and took two still photos.
Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes.
I actually don't need to.
Yeah, I thought they couldn't drive fast in the heavy blizzard, but he shot back to his house and he shot right back. Supposed to poking around and moseying in the house that could be part of the crime scene.
Ms. Gilman, if I could have exhibit number 33
Oh, please
up on the screen.
give us another exhibit.
Just the first one. Sergeant Goode, have you seen what's up on the screen as exhibit 33 before?
Yes.
And what do you recognize this?
That's Lieutenant Gallagher.
And what, if anything, does Lieutenant Gallagher have in his hand at the time in this particular case?
The leaf blower.
And
My own personal leaf
what's
blower.
depicted on the screen, is that a
My own personal leaf blower that I got at Lowe's or Home Depot last year on sale for $89.99. It did a great job at the scene for evidence collection. And yeah, it's my leaf blower. I just shot home and got it because, somebody thought it'd be a great idea because, it was windy and there was snow. We needed to collect some evidence. So I shot home, got it, shot right back. No big whoop. No big whoop because I don't live so far. Everybody lives in the same neighborhood.
fair and accurate trail of what you memorialized on scene that day with respect to the leaf blower?
Yes.
Ms. Gilman, if you could just run just this one video.
Yeah, is it gas or electric? I need to know. Did they plug it in? Is it a handheld? Is there batteries in there? Are we on Candid camera? Are we on Candid camera? Why is nobody in the courtroom laughing? This is laughable. They're saying something, but I don't know what it is.
Right there. Now, with respect to using that leaf blower on scene, Sergeant, what, if anything, did you observe in the snow when that was used to blow away sort of the layers?
It exposed the blood and small drinking glass broken.
And do you see those items in what's frozen up on the screen right now?
I do.
If you could, using that laser point, direct the jury's attention to where you observe each of those items in this video.
So that's the glass right there. And then all the blood droplings.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Ms. Gilman. You can take that. Now, prior to using the leaf blower, what, if anything, did Lieutenant Gallagher instruct you and any other officers to do with regard to your cruisers that were parked on scene?
We needed to move them out of the way. He wanted to be able to get a good shot of the area, so we kind of closed off the road. And
Let's
Ms.
get-
Gilman, if I could have Exhibit 41 back up again.
Wanted to get a good shot of the area, but not a good shot of the area with the body on the ground, because you know that wasn't important. Great question, Shelby. How many people have these people put in prison?
Yeah. Ms. Gilman, if I could ask you to fast forward on this to about 40 minutes and 30 seconds in.
Yes, please hit the FF button. This looks like an SNL skit, says MD. If they don't take advantage of this weekend, then who's in the writer's room over there? I'm going to make a call.
Now, Sergeant Goode, what's up on the screen? Is that the point that you are referencing now as far as about to move your cruiser for that purpose?
this was early when we moved out of the way of the ambulance, I believe.
Well, this is 6:52, and we know that the ambulance was en route to the hospital in transport, I think they called it, at 6:27. So this is 6:52. So, Goody, I don't think you're accurate right now.
Fine.
Oh, no, could be right.
Oh no! Oh no! Oh no! Lally, give him a hand signal.
Regardless, you
Give
recognize
him one of
the-
these.
Yes, sorry. If you just play it forward, I'll know.
I'm sorry. Can you
Just play it forward, I guess.
Ms. Gilman, if you could, I'd like to play this through, so about 41 minutes and 12 seconds or so. But if you could just pause it real quick, I'm sorry. Sergeant, at some point when you move this cruiser, what, if anything, you're able to see in this footage of the front lawn area of 34 Fairview?
So my cruiser camera pans the front yard of 34 Fairview, and it shows the snow undisturbed. No footprints, any tracks, anything like that.
No footprints. How about a body print? Was there a body print? Gabriella says, does he mean Karen's ambulance? Maybe. Maybe you're right. No footprints from the house to the body, but there's no body print either. But they're it's very, very important for them to get out the fact that they say there's no footprints from the house to the body, but having no body print is perfectly acceptable for these guys. This prep is horrific. This testimony is embarrassing, and you should be outraged.
That leading anywhere.
Sergeant, at some point when you move this cruiser, what, if anything, you're able to see in this footage of the front lawn area of 34 Fairview?
So my cruiser camera pans the front yard of 34 Fairview, and it shows the snow undisturbed. No footprints, any tracks, anything like that leading anywhere.
No footprints, no tracks leading in it, but you just used the leaf blower, didn't you? Oh, well, yeah.
And if you could just speak up when we get to that point, and Ms. Gilman, if you could just pause it on that area.
Look at Karen. No, that's Karen on scene. So her ambulance didn't leave yet. Hold on. Isn't that Karen? Yeah, they're walking her off to section her. So this was not after John O'Keefe's ambulance left. That ambulance was already en route at 6:27. Oops, sorry. Where are the tire prints? Avea says John's body could have been transported by a vehicle to where he was laying. Maybe something such as like a Ford Edge that Lucky the plow driver saw parked in front of the house around 3 a.m., 3:30.
Pause it right there. Now, the area that you were speaking about before, is this sort of the portion of the video?
Yes.
And using the laser pointer, if you could direct the jury's attention to the portion of the yard that you were talking about in indication of no footprints or anything that you observed. That's
Yeah.
Does anybody else notice that instead of trying to prove that Karen did this with her car, they're trying to prove that someone else didn't do it? Am I losing my mind here? Have they lost the entire the entire purpose of this prosecution is to show that Karen Reed did it, not to try and defend some third-party culprits to try and prove that they didn't do it, so therefore she must have done it? Is there something backwards in this entire trial? Or am I just in the Twilight Zone? Yes, Tracy, why would he randomly just say there were no footprints to or from the house? Because they have lost focus. They have lost focus about this prosecution. They are no longer trying to prove that Karen Reed did this. They are fixated on the fact that nobody else did it. There is no evidence so far that she did do it, other than one person saying, I did it, not, or I hit him, and that's Katie McLaughlin, when everyone else said, is he dead? Is he dead? Is he alive? Is he alive? Is he gonna live? They're not showing anything that she did it. It seems that way. Yeah, this is what's going on here. And if you can't see it, I don't know how much clearer I can make this, but the fact that he's just tossing out there like a softball. Yeah, I noticed there were no footprints coming from the house to the body. Did you notice if there were any tire marks in the snow? Did you notice any skid marks? Did you notice any, I mean, if she backed into him 60 feet in reverse, going 24.2 miles an hour and threw his body 8 to 10 to 12 feet on the lawn, because nobody can agree on how far onto the lawn his body was, because they didn't take any pictures of his body there or take any measurements, or, more important, that they were doing CPR and that anybody in the vicinity even snap a picture. So they really don't even know where the body was. They've told you that. I submit to you that if it was snowing, the ground would be wet and there would be tire marks, tire treads on the lawn. But they don't have that either. They're just going to keep pounding it into you and the jury that there's no footprints from the house to the body. Therefore, nobody else could have done this. Not even somebody could have helped, like perhaps the best investigator that they've ever known, the brother of the homeowner, Brian Albert, Detective Kevin Albert, best investigator they've ever known. Are you kidding me with this? You should be outraged that this has even gotten this far.
If you could just let it run through for a couple more.
Jacqueline says, it's definitely an Albert is innocent case instead of a Karen is guilty case.
Thank you. And Ms. Gilman, you can take it down.
Rick says Lally has no evidence.
Now, Sergeant Goode, you had spoke about as well some photographs that were taken to memorialize the area of where Mr. O'Keefe was found. Is that correct?
Yes.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
You took some photographs of where his body was found? Okay, great. Can't wait to see these. Anybody else see a mountain of reasonable doubt here? Mama Ames says, I have reasonable doubt. What say you? They lost the plot, says Curiouser and Curiouser. Sarah says the entire investigation this entire case has been backwards from the start.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit 8. First, just if you recognize it.
Yes.
And what do you recognize that?
That is 34 Fairview.
And Ms. Gilman, if I could have Exhibit 8 up on the screen. What's up on the screen? Is that a fair and accurate portrayal of what you observed on scene that day?
Yes.
If I could ask you to flip forward in that book before you to Exhibit number 10.
Same damn photos of nothing.
Okay.
And Ms. Gilman, if we could have Exhibit 10. Sergeant, what's up on the screen? Is that what you have before you with Exhibit 10?
Yes.
And similarly, do you recognize that?
Yes.
And what do you recognize that?
That is a scene where our officers and the witnesses found Officer O'Keefe.
And if you could, using that laser pointer you have before you, direct the jury's attention to where you were directed to where Mr. O'Keefe
Objection, hearsay.
Thank you.
No, I'll allow that.
What? Where you were told his body was found? I got to hear that question again. Sorry, guys.
And if you could, using that laser pointer you have before you, direct the jury's attention to where you were directed to where Mr. O'Keefe was found.
Objection.
Where you were directed to where Officer O'Keefe was found. I don't see how that's coming in, but you know, the judge is going to do what the judge is going to do at this point. I mean, are you kidding me?
Objection, hearsay.
No, I'll allow that.
Go ahead.
Remember, the jury's been to this yard already. They know how small it is.
If
So
I could ask you to flip forward in that book just a little bit more to what's been marked as Exhibit 20A.
Okay.
Ms. Gilman, if I could have that exhibit on the screen as well.
sure, show us your whole exhibit list.
If you recognize what's up on the screen as Exhibit 20A.
Yes, that's the curbing.
And as far as the curbing is concerned, how is it sort of cleared off in this particular area?
We'd had to kick it off with our shoe to clear it off so we could actually see it, make a mark of it.
We all thought that's where the
Again,
body
that
was,
area
but
that you were
no.
directed to, as far as where Mr. O'Keefe was found, you observed that in this photograph, Exhibit 20A as well.
Yes.
If you could, using the laser pointer before you, direct the jury's attention where in this photograph that is.
There's
May I
snow.
approach just to,
Yes.
He's saying that's where the body was? I don't see any grass. Didn't they lead us to believe or tell us in some court papers that there was grass found underneath his body along with his phone? So let's just see where he's pointing to now.
was found, you observed that in this photograph, Exhibit 20A.
Where the body was found.
Yes.
If you could, using the laser pointer before you, direct the jury's attention where in this photograph that is.
Okay. It's covered in snow.
May I approach just to,
Yes.
No, Missy, we've never seen grass. Nope.
lastly, I'm just going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit 27. Sergeant, do you recognize that?
I do.
Ms. Gilman, if we could have 27 on the screen. And Sergeant Goode, what's up on the screen as, and before you as Exhibit 27? Sorry. What's up on the screen, is that what you have before you as Exhibit 27?
Yes.
And if you could describe to the jury what we're looking at in this.
So we have the blood, and then right here is the broken drinking glass that was located.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
May I approach just to retrieve?
Yes.
Still no phone. That's right, buzzing for truth. No phone still. Cammie says, wait until we find out the number of steps that were registered to John O'Keefe's phone.
If I may have just a moment, Your Honor.
Yes.
You're going to need more than a moment to clean this up.
Following your time on scene that morning, sir, where did you go from there?
Once we cleared 34 Fairview, I returned to the Canton Police Department.
And the items that you were talking about as far as the blood, which believed to be blood droplets in the snow and the piece of a cocktail glass, what, if anything, did you or other officers do with regard to that?
Overruled.
Go ahead, sir.
Listen,
Detective Sergeant Lank transported those back to the police department.
Again, just one moment, Your Honor.
Okay.
Noreen can't imagine something like this happening to someone in real life, and yet
I have nothing further for this witness, Your Honor.
it's here. We're
All right,
watching it in
Mr.
real
Atty.
time.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Oh, this should be fun.
Good afternoon, Sergeant.
Afternoon.
Sir, you and I have never met, correct?
No,
We've never spoken.
no,
Sergeant Goode, you grew up in Canton.
I did.
You attended Canton Public Schools.
I did.
You graduated from Canton High School.
I did.
That would have been in 1998.
Yes.
Is it true that in your graduating class was somebody named Courtney Proctor?
Yes.
You knew Courtney Proctor?
Yes.
Well, gee, there's a play on words. When Katie McLaughlin was asked who Caitlin Albert was, she said, I went to school with somebody named Caitlin Albert. And here is Yannetti the master coming out and saying, did you go to school with somebody named Courtney Proctor? Guess who that is? Trooper Michael Proctor's sister. The family roots of Canton are twisted, my friends, and let's just take that back to enjoy that a little bit more.
Good afternoon, Sergeant.
Afternoon.
Sir, you and I have never met, correct?
No.
We've never spoken.
No.
Sergeant Goode, you grew up in Canton?
I did.
You attended Canton Public Schools?
I did.
You graduated from Canton High School?
I did.
That would have been in 1998.
Yes.
Is it true that in your graduating class was somebody named Courtney Proctor?
Yes.
You knew Courtney Proctor?
Yes.
You knew her to be Michael Proctor's sister, correct?
Yes.
Also in your graduating class was somebody named Jill Daniels, correct?
Yes.
You knew her, or you now know her, to be Christopher Albert's sister-in-law, correct?
Yes.
Christopher Albert is married to Jill Daniels' sister, correct?
Yes.
And you know Christopher Albert as Brian Albert's brother, correct?
Yes.
So it is fair to say that you graduated high school with Michael Proctor's sister and Christopher Albert's sister-in-law, correct?
Yes.
And, growing up in Canton and, working for 18 years as a Canton police officer, you're well familiar with the Albert family of Canton, correct?
I work with one of them.
You know that the Albert family is a well-known family in Canton, correct?
Sure.
The
Sure.
Albert family is well connected to the town of Canton, correct?
I don't know what you mean by connected. They live in Canton. Yes.
You don't know what they mean by well connected? You don't know what they mean by well connected? Well, not a big deal, right? I don't know. Tell me, friends, if you think it's a big deal that he graduated from high school with Jill Daniels, who's Chris Albert's sister-in-law, as well as Courtney Proctor, who is the current wife, Michael Proctor. Michael Proctor is the lead detective on the case from the Massachusetts State Police, the one who's currently under internal affairs investigation with regard to his investigation of this case, because there's a federal investigation going on parallel to this case with regard to the investigation of the Karen Reed trial. Follow me? He doesn't know what it means to be connected, so let's just hear him say that again. See if you think that he's telling the truth or not, because you're here to assess his credibility, just like the jury, who is the finder of fact in this case.
And, growing up in Canton and, working for 18 years as a Canton police officer, you're well familiar with the Albert family of Canton, correct?
I work with one of them.
You know that the Albert family is a well-known family in Canton, correct?
Sure.
Oh, Courtney
The
is
Albert
his sister.
family
Sorry.
is well connected to the town of Canton, correct?
I don't know what you mean by connected. They live in Canton. Yes.
Courtney Proctor is Michael Proctor's sister, correct? The one who Julie Albert said, I want to get a gift for your brother. Yeah. Got it. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mike W., for correcting me. Courtney Proctor is Michael Proctor's sister. Elizabeth Proctor is Michael Proctor's wife. Thank you. He's married to Lizzie. Yep. Sorry. Misspoke. Correction duly noted. Moving on. He doesn't know what they mean by connected.
All right, well, Christopher Albert is a Canton town selectman, is he not?
Yes.
And you've already established that Kevin Albert is a Canton police officer, correct?
Yes.
And you already testified that you knew Brian Albert as well, and you knew that he was a Boston police officer who lived in Canton, correct?
Yes.
In fact, he and his family lived at 34 Fairview in Canton, correct?
Yes.
You also knew that his family had been there for years. Before Brian Albert owned the house, his parents owned it, correct?
Yes.
Now, as of January 28th of 2022, who among the Albert family did you know either personally or professionally?
Professionally is Kevin Albert.
Okay, and what about personally?
I knew Chris.
And you know that Christopher Albert, in addition to being a town selectman, also owns a pizza place in Canton, correct?
Yes, he does.
What's the name of that pizza place?
That'd be D&E.
And have you eaten there before?
Yes,
You've seen Christopher Albert there before?
I have.
Is the pizza good at DNA? Can somebody just tell me if the pizza is good? Listen, I'm from New York, so we have the best pizza. There's really not even a contest here, but how do you rate the pizza at DNA? Did Dave from Barstool Sports ever go there and do the one bite pizza review? I need to know how the pizza is at DNA. If you live there, rate the pizza on a scale of 1 to 10. DNA has entered the building, Team Brittany. I don't know if that's on your bingo card. Pizza's not good, says no. 0. Megan says it's 0. The chicken parm is very mediocre, says Neil Green. Mediocre at best. We'll say it's dirty. All right, just wondering, JW.
On January 29th of 2022, you learned at approximately 6 a.m. that John O'Keefe's body was found on Brian Albert's front lawn, correct?
Yes.
And as of January 29th of 2022, you knew that Brian Albert at that time, of course, was the brother of your fellow Canton police officer, Kevin Albert, correct?
Yes.
And how long have you known Kevin Albert for?
As long as I worked at the Canton Police Department.
18
And
years.
that is approximately 18 years.
Coming up on 18 years, yes.
And is Kevin Albert older or younger than you, or around the same age?
He's older than me.
By how many years, if you know?
I don't. Probably
Approximately?
5 years?
Have you ever shared a patrol car with Kevin Albert?
No.
Have you ever worked on an investigation or a case with Kevin Albert?
I probably have. Yeah.
In addition to being a colleague, would you also consider Kevin Albert to be a friend?
Yeah. We've socially hung out after work.
No big whoop. No big whoop.
And because he is a fellow Canton police officer, you'd expect that he would have your back in a crisis, correct?
Objection, Your Honor.
No, I'll let him have it.
I hope he would defend me while working. Yes, he's a police officer.
You would certainly protect him in a crisis, correct?
At work, when we're police officers, yes.
You would certainly protect him in a crisis. Oh, he walked right into that one. That was like a softball. This would be a crisis, wouldn't it, for Kevin Albert's brother, right? So you'd protect him then, or would you protect him then, or are you protecting him now?
Well, even out of work, if he was in a crisis, you'd probably help, correct?
I don't know what you're asking.
You're not a very nice friend, are you?
Well, there is a teamwork that is part and parcel of being a police officer with your fellow officers, correct?
Sure.
It's a dangerous job.
Sure.
You need to have each other's back.
Sure.
You need to depend on your fellow officers, correct?
Sure.
And it's been said there's a brotherhood among police officers, correct?
To a fact.
And
fact.
when you meet another police officer, he or she will tell you that they're, quote, on the job, correct?
Objection, Your Honor.
The objection sustained.
Hold on a second. I'll let him have it. People saying I hate the I'll let him. What is this, a goal? Is this a hockey goal? I'll let him have it. I'll let him have it. Balls and strikes? I'll let him have it. What was the objection to this?
Sure.
And it's been said there's a brotherhood among police officers, correct?
To a fact.
And, when you meet another police officer, he or she will tell you that they're, quote, on the job, correct?
Objection, Your Honor.
Yeah.
The objection sustained.
And in terms of, depending on your fellow officers, you're taught all this beginning in the police academy, correct?
Objection.
No,
Why?
I can have that.
What am I taught?
Well, I'm asking you, with regard to the teamwork and, having each other's backs and, working together and depending on each other, you're taught that starting in the
Sure.
and it's reinforced over the years by superior officers and your colleagues, correct?
Sure.
Now, you were assigned as the primary investigator in the reconstruction analysis for this case, correct?
Assigned as the what?
You were assigned as the primary investigator in the reconstruction analysis for this case.
I don't know reconstruction analysis. No, I
He
was
doesn't
the
understand.
patrol supervisor that day.
He doesn't know what reconstruction analysis is, apparently. He was very perplexed by that question. Maureen, I'm reading your mind. I'm reading your mind. I am saying what everyone is thinking. In this chat, anyway. I didn't have anything to do with accident reconstruction. What are you talking about? I know nothing about that. I know nothing of what you speak. I know nothing of what you speak, this accident reconstruction. I know nothing. I know nothing. Do you have a shrubbery? I know nothing. Very confused by that question, he is. What? He said, what?
You were assigned as the primary investigator in the reconstruction analysis for this case, correct?
Assigned as the what?
You were assigned as the primary investigator in the reconstruction analysis for this case.
I don't know reconstruction analysis. No, I was the patrol supervisor that day.
Well, somebody said you were the construction
Let
analysis.
me just have a moment, Your Honor.
Okay.
Huh. Sure.
May I approach?
Yes.
Now, I'm going to show you what is, not sure how many pages, but there are quite a few.
Okay.
It's a,
Your Honor, if you could not describe what he's showing to the witness and
Yeah,
just
just
show
go
it to
ahead
him.
and show it to him.
sure. I'm going to direct you, I'm taking up the first 4 pages and directing you just to the 5th page.
Okay.
And specifically the second paragraph, and it's numbered number 2.
Okay.
And I will ask you if you've seen that before.
That's what I'm thinking. Unetti always has receipts, right, Patty?
Okay.
And I'll take it back from you.
Okay.
Do you, may-
Sure.
thank you. Do you recognize what this is?
Looks like some state police form.
Okay. Is it a
Why don't you not ask him? He just answered what he thought it was.
I want you to read the title of
familiar
it,
with
sir.
a collision analysis and reconstruction section, a CARS report?
I know the state police has a cars section that handles motor vehicle homicide.
Does this appear to be a CARS report?
I've never seen one. There's you just showed me one. I'm not in the state police.
Okay. But you did see that your name is listed in the paragraph that I pointed out to you,
Sure.
and you're listed as Sergeant Sean Goode, that's you, correct?
Mhm.
Of the Canton Police. And you were assigned as the primary investigator in this reconstruction.
Because I wrote the offense report from that day.
Well, I'm just asking you. I'm dealing with a state police report that lists you as the primary investigator with regard to the reconstruction.
Objection, Your Honor. May we approach?
Sustained.
No.
Sure. Why don't you all come up?
No,
here
you
and
don't need to
bring that
approach on that. This guy is testifying that he's never seen a Massachusetts State Police form in his 18-year career with the Canton Police Department. Are you kidding me? He's never seen a state police report because he doesn't work for the state police. You got to be kidding me. Okay, we may have been born at night, but not last night, my friends. Not last night we weren't born. Give me a break.
22. Sergeant Goode, what was your understanding on February 1st of 2022 regarding the Canton Police Department's role in this homicide investigation?
I believe at some point on the 29th, we recused ourselves and we weren't part of the investigation.
Oh,
We recruised ourselves. We recruised ourselves. Hold on. He says recruised. Even the closed captioning says recruised.
investigation.
I-
On
Role
February 1st.
regarding, Sergeant Goode, what was your understanding on February 1st of 2022 regarding the Canton Police Department's role in this homicide investigation?
I believe at some point on the 29th, we recused ourselves and we weren't part of the investigation.
We
Oh,
recruised ourselves.
so you did know as of the day that John O'Keefe was found on Brian Albert's front lawn that the Canton Police had recused itself from the case, correct?
At some point, I was notified after I finished all my paperwork. Yeah.
And what was your understanding of the recusal decision in terms of what Canton Police was either allowed to do or not?
Well, he had passed away, so now is no matter what, it's state police investigation. It's a homicide. We do not investigate homicides.
Well, you've been a Canton police officer for 18 years, correct?
Yes.
During those 18 years, do you know how many homicide investigations have occurred in Canton?
None.
None?
Homicides? No. And I was involved in none.
In 18 years, there has not been one homicide in Canton. Wow, you guys are just living in a really safe town. Well, at least not one that he's ever been involved with in 18 years. But he was the accident reconstruction person, but he doesn't even know what that means. So maybe that report is wrong as well.
That the department was involved in.
I can't think off the top of my head, no.
So in the 18 years, this is the first homicide that you've been in, your department's been involved in, to your knowledge?
Yes.
Okay. Are you aware that although the state police have primary jurisdiction, they work hand in hand with local departments, usually, unless there's a conflict of interest?
Yes.
So in this case, you learned that there was a conflict of interest. And my question to you is, what did that mean in terms of your potential involvement in the investigation once that conflict was determined?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Chris Jones wants to recruise to
Primary
Cancun.
investigator?
I spoke over that. So, yeah, Buzzing for Truth is saying Sandra Birchmore was a homicide, but didn't they rule that a suicide? Isn't that still ruled a suicide? So, yeah, I was thinking of that too. A lot of the same players apparently in the Sandra Birchmore case. We're just recruising. We'll see what this.
Investigation once that conflict was determined.
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Sustain everything.
Were you the primary investigator for the Canton Police Department as of February 1st?
No.
No?
Did you participate with the state police in any part of the reconstruction?
No.
Now, Sergeant Goode, who is Brian Higgins?
He is a ATF agent that has a satellite office out of the Canton Police Department.
And when did you come to meet him?
I have no idea when he started. It's been years.
Years, over a decade?
I don't think so, but maybe.
Between 5 and 10 years?
Sure.
Sure. We'll give it to him.
And how often would you see him at the Canton Police Station?
I worked midnights, so during that time, but I mean, 3 times a week I would see him. I mean, we don't have the same work schedule. I don't know when he works. He doesn't know when I do.
Okay, and when you say you work midnights, that means you come in at midnight?
Yes.
At 8 a.m.?
Correct.
And he works in the same building as you in terms of the fact that he has an office there, correct?
Yes.
Are there any other ATF agents that have offices at the Canton?
There could be. They don't check in with us.
Do you know of any ATF agents that have offices at the Canton Police Department?
Not that I know of, no.
What about officers from other local departments, surrounding towns? Do they have any offices at the Canton Police Department?
No,
And you're not sure exactly how long he's had that office for, but it's been years.
correct.
He has his own key card to enter the building?
Yes,
And you say you've seen him 2 or 3 times a week in the time that he's had an office there?
sure.
You're aware that Brian Higgins is a close friend of the former Canton Police Chief, Kenneth Berkowitz?
Sure.
You know that Chief Berkowitz was the reason that he was allowed to maintain an office at the Canton Police Department.
I didn't know that.
Well, his close friend, Chief Berkowitz, was your boss on January 29th of 2022, correct?
His close friend?
Yeah, Brian Higgins' close friend, Chief Berkowitz, was your boss on January 29th of 2022.
Okay,
And does okay mean yes?
yes.
And you worked the midnight shift that day as well?
No,
What was your shift?
I took it off.
What?
Were you assigned to dispatch that day?
The night of the incident?
Yes.
No, I stayed inside. I was inside.
Inside where?
The dispatch. I handle all the calls, send the guys everywhere.
All right, that was my question. I'm sorry if I'm
Okay.
I'm not being clear.
Sorry if you're not listening to me.
You were on duty, correct?
Yes,
What was your shift?
my shift was I stayed inside,
I'm sorry, what was the time?
What were the hours of your shift,
12
sir?
to 8.
Thank you. And when you say you stayed inside, that meant you were handling
Oh,
dispatch, correct?
Correct.
And when you're handling dispatch, you're not expected to leave the station and physically respond to calls that come in, correct?
It depends on the call. Anything within reason that a supervisor should go, I'm leaving the station.
Okay, but,
Normal car accidents, stuff like that patrol can handle, no.
okay, so unless it's something,
Normal car accident stuff that somebody could handle. No. But I thought this was a car accident. But no. It's a homicide, and they've never had one before. So he wanted to get there. He wanted to be there because he's never responded to a homicide scene before. Are you seeing? Are you picking up what he's laying down? Picking up what he's laying down? Let's see.
unusual, you're going to stay at dispatch, correct?
Correct.
And just after 1:30 a.m., while you were working dispatch, that's when you saw Brian Higgins enter the Canton Police Station at 1:30 in the morning, correct?
Correct.
Did he come into the dispatch area?
I said that earlier. I don't remember him coming in, or just did I see him on the cameras walking down the hallway? We have I think we have 7 or 8 monitors in front of me that I'm able to watch people around our building.
So it could be that you just saw him on a screen, or it could be that he was in your room,
Correct.
but you don't remember which, correct?
Correct.
And before he showed up there at 1:30, you hadn't called him to ask him to come in, correct?
No.
You hadn't asked him for any help with any investigation at 1:30, correct?
No.
When you first saw him there at 1:30, did you have any idea why he was showing up?
No.
And when you first saw him, do you remember what entrance he used to come into the Canton Police Station?
I don't. It was from the back parking lot. I don't know if he was on the left back rear or right back rear.
And you would agree with me that 1:30 in the morning was hours before John O'Keefe was found unresponsive on Brian Albert's front lawn, correct?
Yes.
You had no information at 1:30 in the morning that John O'Keefe was out on Brian Albert's front lawn at that time, correct?
Correct.
And when Brian Higgins entered the department, that was the first time you had seen him on either the 28th or the 29th, correct?
Correct.
And this is again at 1:30 in the morning.
Mhm.
And
Yes.
you have to say yes or no.
Yes.
Thank you. You didn't know where he was coming from?
No.
You didn't know what he had done that night?
Absolutely not.
You didn't know who he had been with that night?
No.
This was a Friday night into early Saturday morning with a major blizzard forecast.
Correct.
It already started snowing.
Yes.
It was supposed to get worse.
Yes.
Was it unusual to see Brian Higgins come into the station at 1:30 a.m. on a weekend?
No,
No.
And you don't recall how close you got to him.
no,
Are you able to tell this jury anything about his demeanor?
no. He just walked in. It's not unusual. We wouldn't have made pleasantries or say hello to each other. It's not uncommon.
And you don't recall whether or not you got close enough to him to smell his breath or to smell what he smelled like, correct?
No,
At any point, did he tell you why he was there?
no.
How long did he remain at the station for?
No idea. I only saw him come in, never saw him leave or anything like that.
Did you ever see him do any paperwork at the station?
That night?
Yes.
No.
Did you ever see him do any administrative work at the station?
I can't leave the dispatch room. His office is out on the second floor.
All right. So let's skip ahead a few hours later. You're still working dispatch when a call came in that a man was found unresponsive on Brian Albert's front lawn, correct?
Yes.
This is just after 6 a.m.
Yes,
You yourself took that call?
I did.
And with regard to who is responsible for entering the information that came in on a call to dispatch, who is that?
The person that's working the desk.
All right, so at 6 a.m., you were responsible for taking down the information and entering it into your system, correct?
It's being recorded through the 911 dispatch, correct? But I didn't enter it into our IMC program, which is our daily log.
Who enters that into your daily log?
That'd be the person that's working the desk.
And you had previously testified that location is important, correct?
Correct.
You would discuss the fact that if a call comes in on a cell phone as opposed to a landline, you want to know where that cell phone is, correct?
Yes,
And you have ways of pinging the cell phone such that you can actually see the location on a map, correct?
sure, yes.
And you would agree with me that ultimately when the location was entered into your system, the location was entered as 32 Fairview, correct?
No, it was 34. At least we put it out as 34.
34 was the actual address, but 32 is what made it into the police report, sir, did it not?
No, my police report says 34 Fairview.
Show him the dispatch log, Yannetti. Oh, here's somebody say, I don't have that.
Call came in after. Now, when that call came in after 6 a.m., you decided that you would personally go out, correct?
Yes,
Okay. I actually have the front page of your police report. May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes. Show Mr. Lally.
thank you.
I'd ask you to read that silently to yourself, take a good look at it, and look up at me when you're done. And you've had enough time to review it?
Yes,
Getting back to the location, which you said was important, what is the location listed in your very police report?
on the face sheet, it says 32, but in my narrative is 34.
Oh, the face sheet is important, is it not?
Yes,
People see the face sheet before they get to the narrative, correct?
sure.
Is accuracy important?
Yes,
And the very first thing that's entered with regard to the location is inaccurate, right?
say it again.
The very first entry with regard to the location on your police report on the face sheet is inaccurate. Would you agree with that?
I guess so, yes.
Guess so.
And with regard to the name down the bottom of that report, I left the report in front of you so you could look at it again. Would you read that silently to yourself and look up at me?
Okay.
Does that refresh your memory as to what name is listed?
Yes.
What name is that?
John O'Keefe.
No. I can have that back for a minute. Now, you decided that you wanted to go to the call, or you decided it would be a good thing for you to go to the call personally, correct?
Yes,
So you called Officer Kelly Deaver into dispatch,
I did.
and you did that because you wanted her to cover the desk for you so that you could personally respond to the call, correct?
Correct.
Responding to the call wasn't your duty assignment, but you made it your duty assignment, correct?
Correct.
And if you were going to leave, somebody had to cover.
Correct.
After that, you personally called two of your other colleagues who were not on duty that night to respond with you to Brian Albert's house, correct?
Yes, I did.
And you previously testified, I believe, that Sergeant Michael Lank was one of those officers, and he arrived at 6:25 a.m., correct?
Correct.
And then Lieutenant Paul Gallagher was the other officer, and he arrived closer to 7 a.m., correct?
Yes.
When you responded to 34 Fairview on January 29th, did you know that residence?
Yes.
And what did you know that residence to be?
I knew that to be Brian Albert's house.
He knew. He inserted
You and
himself.
Sergeant Lank had both been to that residence before, correct?
No.
Together.
Actually, we have. We were there for a police report years ago.
Oh,
Oh, you were there for a police report years ago? What had happened then? I can't wait to hear what that was about. He just opened the door on that. They were there at Brian Albert's house for a police report many years ago. So not for a party or anything, or a pool party or a barbecue. Somebody said, what was that emoji that I put into the chat? It was a troll emoji. There's a new troll emoji. It's you can't really see it. It's like green and pink. It looks like a little troll. Why were you there years ago? I'm sure, Yannetti has other receipts than them being years ago for a police report. But if they do have the police report of something that somebody in that house did, that's interesting too. So I can't, either way, I'm excited to hear what it is.
and so when you decided to respond to the scene on January 29th, that residence of 34 Fairview, you knew exactly where you were going.
Yes.
And when you got there, you knew you were outside the home of Boston Officer Brian Albert, correct?
Yes.
And this was a memorable event. Would you agree with me?
Yes.
Before January 29th of 2022, you had never responded to a call where the body of one police officer was found on the front lawn of another police officer's house, correct?
Yes.
And at some point after you arrived, you saw both Sergeant Lank and Detective Gallagher arrive, correct?
Yes.
It was Sergeant Lank who first entered the home and made initial contact with Brian Albert and his family?
No, I was right next to him.
So is it your testimony that the first time the police went in the house, you were there with Sergeant Lank?
Yes.
All right.
Oh,
And when you went in, can I have Exhibit 8 on the screen, please?
that was when he was moseying around the front, poking around.
Okay. Terrific. You're able to see Exhibit 8?
Yes.
Sergeant? Is that a fair depiction of what the house looked like when you entered it?
Yes.
And the award for the most useless
Yeah.
scene photograph ever goes to this one. But I guess it's the only photo they have of the house because they don't have any photos of the body on the lawn. That's not how they do it in Canton. Sorry.
Yes.
Is that the door that you entered?
Yes.
And you had testified that you looked around the immediate area where you were while Sergeant Lank was asking questions. You noticed that when you entered that front door, you come into a foyer area, and directly in front of you on the left, you can almost reach out and touch. There's a door that goes down to the cellar, is there not?
I don't know. I don't remember a door there.
Okay. So which door? Let's go back because remember earlier we looked at some footage of Jennifer Coffendorfer running up and taking a picture on the porch. Which door did he go in? Did he go in the middle door? Here's the middle door. Here's my cursor. It's not a fly. Don't break your TV screen. Did he go in this door? Because Jennifer Coffendorfer went over to this door, ran up, even though there were 2 cars in the driveway last week, maybe, or the week before, ran up through their landscaping onto that porch, snapped a picture, and then ran away like the Pink Panther. So which door did he enter? Right inside to the left was he was too busy moseying, a door to the cellar. So hang on.
And you had testified
Talking about this
that
door.
you looked around the immediate area where you were while Sergeant Lank was asking questions. You noticed that when you entered that front door, you come into a foyer area, and directly in front of you on the left, you can almost reach out and touch. There's a door that goes down to the cellar, is there not?
I don't know. I don't remember a door there. I remember the stairs going up to the second floor.
I see. So you don't.
I don't know. Most law enforcement guys that I know, guys, girls, law enforcement officers, firefighters, are meticulous with their details. They can remember everything. He doesn't remember seeing a door to a cellar. Remembers the stairs going upstairs, but no, doesn't know anything about a door to the cellar.
Don't remember that as you step into the house, you can go down a cellar door right away.
Objection.
No, I don't know where his cellar is.
The objection sustained.
Oh, well, cat's
You
out of the
don't know
bag on
where
that
the
one.
cellar is, and that's in part because you did not go down to the cellar.
Nope.
Correct?
Correct.
You never examined it?
No.
You never saw what condition it was in?
No.
Saw whether there was any signs of struggle down there?
No.
You never saw if anything was tipped over?
No.
You never saw whether there was any blood or other trace evidence down there?
Objection, Your Honor.
The objection sustained. You've made your point.
Never went down there at all.
Can we turn the lights back on, please? Do you need this, Miss Gianetti?
Turn the lights back on.
Okay, now going back to when you first arrived, Sergeant, you were alone in your cruiser, correct?
Yes.
You weren't driving with a partner that morning.
No.
You were the second officer on scene?
No. Third.
Who got there before you did?
Officer Saraf and Officer Mulaney.
Okay, so Mulaney actually beat you there?
Yes.
But only within a matter of minutes, correct?
Sure.
Sure.
You arrived in your marked cruiser, correct?
Yes.
You had your overhead emergency lights on, correct?
Correct.
You pulled up right in the front of the house, facing in the wrong direction in terms of the lane that you were in.
Correct.
You were parked on Fairview, adjacent to the Albert residence, and you were facing towards Cedar Crest, correct?
Correct.
When you parked, you left your motor running, correct?
Yes.
And when you got out of your cruiser, one prominent sound that you heard was Karen Reed screaming at the top of her lungs, correct?
Yes.
She appeared to be in distress.
Correct.
She appeared to be crying.
I did not see her crying.
She was hysterical.
Yes.
She was very loud.
Yes.
And you could hear her yelling throughout that morning, could you not?
Correct.
After you got there, other emergency vehicles showed up?
No.
Did you see any other cruisers show up?
If you want to call it an unmarked detective pickup truck, a cruiser, sure.
Okay, so there was one additional police vehicle that showed up?
Sergeant Lank arrived in that, and then Lieutenant Paul Gallagher arrived in his unmarked cruiser.
Okay, so 2 additional vehicles. And also Officer Saraf's vehicle was there?
And Mulaney's, correct.
And Mulaney. So we're now up to 4 police vehicles on scene?
Yes.
They all have their lights on?
No. Detective Sergeant Lanks does not have any lights in it, and neither did Paul Gallagher's lights
Why
were not
wake up the
activated, I
neighborhood?
believe.
I see. So you and Saraf and Mulaney had your lights on?
Correct.
And I actually miscounted. That would be 5 police vehicles, correct?
Sure.
All right. 3
Sure.
with their lights on. What about ambulances?
There were 2 ambulances that showed up, one for the first transport of Officer O'Keefe and second for Miss Reed, but they were never there at the same time.
All right. When you first got there, was the first ambulance there?
It was.
And that ambulance also had its lights on?
Yes,
How many fire trucks were there when you were there?
just one.
And that also had its lights on as well?
Correct.
And engine running?
Yes.
And everyone was essentially parked around and in front of 34 Fairview, correct?
Correct.
And all the while, the first responders are talking over the noise of the storm, correct?
Yes.
And they're also talking over the screaming by Karen Reed, correct?
Sure.
At one point, Kerry Roberts even yelled at Karen, and I apologize for the language, but she yelled at her to shut the fuck up, correct?
I have no idea. I don't recall that.
The scene was very chaotic. Would you agree?
Oh, yes.
All right. Could I have Exhibit 16 on the screen, please?
Next emoji for tomorrow is going to be sure.
Oh, yes, of course.
Sure.
Sorry.
Sure.
Okay. Now, this has previously been admitted as sort of a side-to-side comparison between your cruiser dash cam and Officer Saraf's dash cam.
Okay.
And they've been synchronized.
Sure.
Okay.
If we could start.
Hold on. I'm going to full screen this for you and take myself off screen so that you can see it better. This banner is coming down. And we're going to let this have the full screen so you can hopefully see it a little bit better. All 2,939 of you. It would be so lovely if you would hit that like button and the subscribe button. It's free and it helps the channel and helps the stream get out because this is the way that we like to watch trials together.
At 9 minutes in, please.
So, Ms. Giannetti, this is not yet in evidence.
Yes, it is.
I had it as Exhibit 16. Am I
Right.
correct?
I'm pretty sure we looked at this side-by-side dash cam in one of the other officers' testimony. So at the top, we have Officer Saraf's dash cam, and in the bottom, we have Officer Goode's dash cam. 6:15:06 is the time on this. Pretty sure we have seen it before. Correct me if I'm wrong. We absolutely looked at this. It says Mrs. Wicked Smart, and I'm going to say that she's wicked smart.
Correct.
Right. So it's not in yet.
I think it is.
With regard to your dash cam, sir, do you recognize the bottom video here as depicting your view as you were driving to the scene?
Sure.
And that appears to be a fair and accurate representation of what was shown to you on direct examination with regard to your dash cam?
Yes.
You can continue.
There's no audio. You're not missing anything. Yes, it was used in Saraf's testimony. I thought so. My father's keeper.
Okay, we can pause it there. Would you agree with me, Sergeant Goode, that you were arriving on scene at approximately 6:16 a.m. on January 29th?
Yes.
And I'd ask you to review and compare your dash cam video with the top dash cam video for the next 30 seconds or a minute, please. And I'll
Okay.
ask you some questions after that.
Sure.
Can you pause it? Sergeant Goode, does it appear as though the top dash cam shows the exact same thing as the bottom dash cam, just from a different vantage point?
Yes.
Can you play it for another 20, 30 seconds?
You can see Jen McCabe up here talking with her hands, almost like she's doing sign language of some sort. I'm going to rewind that a little bit. She's being very animated and she's talking with her hands. Hold on a second. I don't remember seeing this angle before.
Were you able to see when people are moving, or when somebody's moving in the top version, they're also moving in the bottom version, just again from different vantage points?
Yes.
So do these both appear to be fair and accurate representations of the dash cams that were going on at that time?
Yes.
I would offer that, Your Honor.
Okay, I'd like to see counsel at sidebar for just 1 second.
Why are we doing a sidebar? We already looked at this earlier, except for that we didn't know that Jen. I swiped out, but don't worry, because I'm back. And they're still at sidebar. Because, you know, swiper keeps swiping. I did a sidebar. I went on sidebar. No worries. No worries. We're right back. Right back to the sidebar.
We had it as a placeholder from before. It was 379, and on Friday, we said that it would stay as 16, assuming it was put in evidence. That's what you have, Tori and Jim? Great.
Nobody knows.
Okay, we can take that off the screen. Thank you. Now, Sergeant Goode, you've testified that you got there at about 6:16 a.m. and relying on Exhibit 16 that I placed before you, correct?
Okay. Yes.
You stayed on scene for over an hour and 40 minutes. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
You left maybe around 7:50 a.m. or so?
Correct.
And during the beginning part of the 1 hour and 40 minutes that you were on scene, with all the vehicles that we've just seen at around 6:16 a.m. and for the first 10, 15 minutes with all those lights flashing, you never saw Brian Albert come out of his house, correct?
Correct.
And did you see first responders working on John O'Keefe when you were there?
No.
He had already been loaded into the ambulance at that time?
Correct.
So you didn't see him actually being scooped up and put on a stretcher, correct?
I don't recall. No.
And with regard to the remainder of the time that you were on scene, up until all the way through 7:50 in the morning, did you ever see Brian Albert come out of his home?
No.
Did you ever see anyone come out of the Albert residence?
Other than Jen McCabe and Matt McCabe, no.
Were you aware when you entered the...
Wait, Jen McCabe and Matt McCabe came out of the home?
See Brian Albert come out of his home?
No.
Did you ever see anyone come out of the Albert residence?
Other than Jen McCabe and Matt McCabe, no.
Matt McCabe,
Were you aware when you entered the Albert residence that morning that John O'Keefe was found on his front lawn wearing only one shoe, black in color.
I was not aware of him missing a shoe. No.
Um, While you were there, you were listening to the questions that Sergeant Lank was asking Brian Albert.
Yes.
Did you ever hear Sergeant Lank ask Brian Albert that morning if he knew where the other shoe was that was black in color?
Objection.
Sustained.
Why? He could ask him if he overheard something. Maybe not. Maybe it's hearsay, but
While you were there, did you ever hear Sergeant Lank ask Brian Albert when he learned that John O'Keefe was lying on his front lawn?
Objection.
Sustained.
You knew that Brian Albert, as a Boston police officer, is a first responder, correct?
Yes.
All police officers are first responders, correct?
Yes.
You know from your training that all police officers have to receive CPR and other necessary training to be first responders, correct?
Yes.
At any point in time, did you ask Brian Albert why he didn't come out of his house?
No.
Did Sergeant Lank, in your presence, ask him why he didn't come out of his house?
Objection.
Sustained.
After clearing the scene at 7:50 in the morning, did you go back to the station?
I did.
Do you know whether or not Kevin Albert was working that day?
I don't.
Did you see Kevin Albert that day?
I don't recall seeing him.
Did you speak with Kevin Albert that day?
No.
Now, since that day, it's been almost 2.5 years. You've continued working on the same police force as Kevin Albert, correct?
Yes.
At some point in time, you and Kevin Albert discussed the fact that you were one of the first responding officers to his brother's home for this tragic incident, correct?
Yes.
It's a very unique situation, correct?
Yes.
Many officers on the department were interested to know what you saw and heard that day, correct?
Sure.
sure. I want to hear the question again. Sure. Only homicide ever in Canton. So yeah, it was a little bit unique.
To his brother's home for this tragic incident, correct?
Yes.
It's a very unique situation, correct?
Yes.
Many officers on the department were interested to know what you saw and heard that day, correct?
Sure.
At what point in time after January 29th did Kevin Albert broach the topic with you as to what had happened on January 29th?
Objection.
That is all admissible. Any conversations that he had with Kevin Albert are absolutely 100% admissible because Kevin Albert is coming in as a witness and he is allowed to testify about any conversations he had with Kevin Albert. So if she doesn't let this in, I might blow my top.
Can you answer that?
What do you mean? Can you
Sure.
answer that? Don't help the witness. I'll give you that. I'll allow that. I'll give you that. Don't say, can you answer that? So he has the opportunity to say, no, I can't answer that. It's not how this works, this whole judge thing, okay? It's not how this works. Let's rewind that a bit. Tell me about your conversations with Kevin Albert after the date of January 29th.
At what point in time after January 29th did Kevin Albert broach the topic with you as to what had happened on January 29th?
Objection.
Can you answer that?
Sure. I don't recall ever immediately talking to Kevin Albert about
Ever immediately.
the incident. No.
Right. Were you
I don't recall ever immediately talking about Kevin to the incident, about the incident. I don't recall ever immediately talking to him. Okay, ever? Did you ever talk to him? What is your definition of immediately? Same day, next day, 1 week later, 2 weeks later, a month later, anytime up until today. Did you ever, any time up until today, did you ever have any conversations with Kevin Albert about this incident? How about before you went and testified in front of the state grand jury? Did you have a conversation with him before that? This is insane.
said that you don't recall talking to him that day, but certainly within a couple of weeks, the two of you caught up, correct?
I can't remember. No.
I'm sorry?
I can't recall that. No.
Within a couple of months, you talked about it?
Sure.
Sure.
When you say sure, sir, I take that as you're saying, well, if you really want to go there, I'll give you the sure answer. You have to answer yes or no.
Okay, yes.
So you answer yes or no if you
Yeah.
can, and if you can't, you can't. So
Again, she's giving him the out. Are we going to coach all the witnesses for the prosecution, Your Honor? Is that what we're going to do? We're going to now give them options? It's like a freaking multiple choice. Give him an option about whether he wants to answer the question, Your Honor. How about that? Give him a damn option. It's multiple choice here in Cannoni's courtroom. Can you answer that? Because if you can't answer that, then, you could just say you can't answer that. I've never seen anything like this. You guys watch a lot of trials too. Tell me.
Say sure, sir. I take that as you're saying, well, if you really want to go there, I'll give you the sure answer. You have to answer yes or no.
Okay, yes.
so you answer yes or no if you
Yeah.
can, and if you can't, you can't. So
Right.
ask the question again, or just move on.
No,
please.
don't answer it again because he said yes. He answered the question.
Do
He
you recall
said
where
yes.
you were when you and Kevin Albert discussed what had happened on January 29th?
No,
Do you recall who else was present?
no,
Do you recall whether it was in person or over the phone?
I don't recall, no.
You certainly told him what you observed and heard that day, correct?
Yes,
Now, when you arrived, you were on scene not only to assist with, first aid and secure the scene, but as a first responder, your job is to assess the situation and also make an initial determination about gathering evidence. Would you agree with that?
yes,
So you'd be on the lookout for any physical evidence, correct?
yes,
And you'd certainly be on high alert for any individual who made any statement about what may have occurred, correct?
correct.
That's important not only for treatment purposes of somebody who apparently is hurt, but also for investigative purposes, correct?
Correct.
And again, you were the third officer on the scene by minutes in terms of the other two officers arriving before you, correct?
Yes,
And while you were on scene for over an hour and 40 minutes, and by the way, when I say on scene, it's clear to you that I'm asking you about 34 Fairview, correct?
yes,
There was no scene at the Canton Police Department, correct?
no, I'm talking about 34 Fairview.
Of course, a scene is where something happened, correct?
Yes,
If you know, you know.
While you were on scene at 34 Fairview for an hour and 40 minutes, did you ever once hear Karen Reed say, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him?
I did not.
And you wrote a report regarding this, correct?
I did.
You are trained over your 18 years that you include every important detail in that report, correct?
Correct.
Certainly a statement by Karen Reed screaming out, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him, would have been an important detail that you would have included in your report, correct?
Yes,
You do not intentionally omit, I should say, any important details from your report, correct?
correct.
You did not include that language, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him, in your report, correct?
Correct.
And the reason you didn't include it is that you never heard those words come out of Karen Reed's mouth, correct?
Correct.
Sure.
Okay, now getting back to potential physical evidence, if you're at a potential crime scene, you want to find what you can, correct?
Correct.
You want to properly secure any physical evidence, right?
Correct.
In order.
Wait, this is great. Bora says judge needs a fidget toy, like a fidget spinner. A fidget spinner. I could make a fidget spinner emoji that would also double as a fan emoji. Done. She does. She needs a fidget spinner. She's fidgeting in her chair. Bah ha 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 ha. Thank you, Kristen Nash, for the super sticker. I appreciate you. Did you see him look over to Lally? Oh no, we got to rewind it for that. Let's take a little rewind.
To assist you want evidence, those words come out of Karen Reed's mouth, correct?
Correct.
Okay, now getting back to potential physical evidence, if you're at a potential crime scene, you want to find what you can, correct?
Correct.
You want to properly secure any physical evidence, right?
Correct.
In order to assist the investigation, you're prepared to conduct a thorough search for evidence that may shed light on what had happened, correct?
Correct.
And you did participate in a thorough search in this case, did you not?
The best we could in the elements that we had, we were dealing with. Yes.
You know, you had previously, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off
Nope.
if I did. You had previously testified, and I think I'm quoting you, the leaf blower worked great, correct?
Yes.
Leaf blower worked great.
You would agree with me that with that leaf blower, your department was able to actually get down to the bare ground, correct?
Yes.
And you were directed to the precise area where John O'Keefe had been laying, correct?
Yes.
And so you knew the area that needed to be searched, correct?
Yes.
You certainly want to properly search around that area, correct?
Correct.
And after John O'Keefe was in the ambulance and transported to the hospital, that was the very area that you were eyeballing, correct?
Yes.
And you visually searched that area as best you could in the conditions, correct?
Yes.
And you tried to be as careful as you could be.
Yes.
You did not want to miss anything.
Correct.
You took your job very seriously.
Yes.
In addition to scouring the area with your eyes, did you use your hands to search in the snow?
I don't remember doing that. I was recording it.
I'm sorry.
I don't remember it that way. I was recording the scene.
I see. Okay. Did you see other officers using their hands to search the scene?
I don't recall it that.
Do you recall officers using their feet to clear some areas?
Yes.
Oh,
And you were the one that actually got your leaf blower, correct?
I did.
he went home and got the leaf blower if you're just joining us. Sergeant Sean Goode, who's been with Canton PD for 18 years and never had a homicide investigation ever in Canton, because nobody's ever been killed in Canton apparently before, went home and got a leaf blower and said the leaf blower did a fine job blowing away the layers of snow. They were able to get all the way to the ground, but he was videotaping Sergeant Gallagher, who testified earlier today, using the actual leaf blower on scene. So he was the videographer, while Lieutenant Gallagher or Sergeant Gallagher was the actual manning the actual leaf blower to look for evidence. And that's where we find ourselves in this land of confusion today.
First time you ever used that in an investigation, fair to say?
Yes.
First and last.
And your search was thorough enough, when I say your search, I mean your department search in addition to your observations. It was thorough enough that you actually did recover small droplets of blood, correct?
We did.
Who was it that collected those blood droplets?
That was Lieutenant Gallagher and Sergeant Lank.
In addition to the blood droplets, you were looking for anything else that might be out of place there?
Sure.
Small items,
Of course.
large items?
Anything.
And as you were on scene, it was starting to get lighter as the morning progressed, correct?
Yes.
And again, you didn't clear the scene until almost 8 a.m.
Correct.
And you searched and were keeping alert to what was around you for the time that you were on scene, correct?
Yes.
During that 1 hour, I should say, and 40 minutes, you did not find 45 pieces of red and black and clear taillight pieces at 34th Fifth, correct?
No.
No, even though you had a leaf blower blowing all the evidence around and trying to find evidence right around the body, you did not see 45 pieces of red or black or clear taillight. But what you did see was pieces of a clear drinking glass. So there's that. Let's just take a quick breather from this good testimony of Sergeant Goode. Thanks on top for your super sticker. Hubert, thanks for your $5. Sergeant Goode's wife and Brian Albert's wife, Nicole, are good friends. Mrs. Goode and Nicole are good friends, according to Hubert. Cannot confirm nor deny. Cam says, I will let him have it if that doesn't show bias. Right, says Cam. And thanks for your super chat, PTSD healer. for the 10th spot. Can he ask him about firefighter Katie saying, "Get Goody down here"? After alleged "I hit him" comments made, did someone get him down there? Sure doesn't sound like it is. Sure doesn't sound like it. I mean, that would be hearsay, but we'll see if he goes there on this, because we did hear Katie say, was it yesterday already? Or Friday? What's today? Today's only Monday, you guys. It feels like it's already Thursday, but it's only Monday. It's a full day of testimony today. Let's see if he goes there, if he brings up Katie at all. Stay tuned.
How many pieces of taillight did you find on or around that property?
That morning, none.
Then that
Did you
morning,
find a men's hat, black in color?
No.
Did you find a size 12 men's shoe, black in color?
No.
Now, you would agree that it's important to preserve and secure a crime scene?
Yes.
Why is that?
You don't want the crime scene to be contaminated.
And you also do not want, and you'd like to prevent a crime scene from also being manipulated. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
manipulated.
What steps were taken, either by you or in your presence, to close off and secure the crime scene at 34th Fairview?
We had crime scene tape up while we were there, and then we also had Officer Mulaney on the road.
And when you say you had Officer Mulaney on the road, you mean blocking off
Yeah.
the road?
Correct.
Are you aware of something called a crime scene log?
No.
You recall being trained in the academy that when there is a crime scene that needs to be preserved, it is advisable to set up a log so that all personnel are required to sign in and sign out. Again, to prevent contamination and to prevent manipulation. Do you not recall that training?
I don't recall that, no.
He doesn't
With
remember.
regard to the
He doesn't know anything about a crime scene log for preservation of the scene, my friends. They want you to believe it. They want the jury to believe that the Canton Police Department is absolutely 100% incompetent. Didn't find 45 pieces of taillight, didn't find a black baseball cap, didn't find a black size 12 shoe. You did not find, you don't remember learning in the police academy about crime scene logs. You've never had a homicide case before, and yet, the prosecution would like the jury to believe, and the viewing public who's international, that the Canton Police Department is incompetent. Thank you, Casey, for your super sticker. I really appreciate that. I know, my friends, that many of you are international. And so if you are international, my friends, please say hello and tell us where you're watching from. Because while this originally was a local Massachusetts story, it has since grown into an East Coast story and is now an international story. The world is watching, my friends. The world is watching. Sergeant Goode, the world is watching. They want all of us to believe that despite the fact that you went home and got your very own leaf blower, brought it back to the scene, it was a fine leaf blower, it was doing a fine job. You couldn't find 45 pieces of red taillight and black taillight, but you found a clear drinking glass and 6 droplets of blood that you went across the street to get solo cups from the deputy chief. Is his name Tom Kelleher? Tom Kelleher's house, and nobody else in the neighborhood came out of their yard, so outside. So totally understandable that first responder and homeowner Brian Albert wouldn't come out either. Hi, Netherlands. Hello, ciao to my friends in Italy. Ciao. Ciao, Italy. I see Netherlands. I see Ireland. Hello, Ireland. Hello, Vienna. Ah, Vienna. Netherlands, there's a little tiny flag here that is way too small for me to read. So hello, DZ. Canada in the house. Arkansas, London calling. Here's London calling. Jersey's in the chat. That doesn't count. South Africa. Germany is in the chat. You guys are watching internationally, and tell me, what say you? This is insane. This is insane. London. South Africa. At least 2. At least 2 from Germany. Norway in the house. Ireland is in the house. At least 3 from South Africa in the house. The world is watching. Sweden is in the house. This England is in the house. This is law enforcement 101, you guys. Law enforcement 101. This is crime scene investigation 101. And they, Vienna, they know nothing. He doesn't even know from a crime scene log. He doesn't know from a crime scene log. What? Australia, hello. Hello, Nova Scotia. Oh, for the love of the traveling Mary. Back to Sergeant Good, aka Goody. Get Goody down here. Hello, Germany.
The fact that it was actively snowing at the time, did you consider putting a tent around the area to prevent and minimize the environmental intrusions like the snow?
It would have been useless.
Oh,
Did you utilize any heaters?
a tent would have been useless, but didn't the last guy Gallagher say that he actually, it was in the report that he got a tent from the station, but he actually had one in his trunk, so he used the one that was in his trunk for tailgating. This would have been useless, says the guy who never had one homicide ever.
To assist in melting the snow in that area?
No.
And before you cleared the scene, or I should say when you cleared the scene, did you post an officer to guard the scene so that nobody could get in or out?
No.
How long was the road closed off for?
While we were there, so those 2 hours.
All right. And then after the 2 hours, there was nobody guarding the scene. Would you agree?
Yes, correct.
The road was not closed off.
No,
That crime scene was open to the public.
correct.
Oh, see? Oop, there it is. Oop, there it is. The crime scene was open to the public after they left, after they were there, after their 2-hour tour. Their 2-hour tour. What time did he get there? 6:45. Let's say they were out of there by 8:45. After they left, the scene was not secured at all. It was open to the public. It was open to the public until guess who came back later? Massachusetts State Police came back later after another foot of snow had fallen, at least maybe 20 inches. I'm not really sure. I'm not the weatherman here, or the weather girl, or the weather lady. They left it open to the public around 8:45 a.m. until Massachusetts CERT team came back around 6 p.m. after the Lexus was seized, after the Lexus was towed back to the Canton Sallyport. And that's when some of the taillight pieces were found. You can't make it up. Oop, there it is.
So with regard to, a crime scene log, a tent, heaters, keeping an officer there to make sure nobody got in or out of that crime scene, you would agree none of those protocols were followed, correct?
I don't believe there is a protocol for a tent in our policy.
Okay.
So I guess leave the tent out of it. None
Okay.
of those other protocols were followed, correct?
Correct.
And certainly a tent was not put up either.
No.
Correct?
Correct.
Now, with regard to your police report, going back to that, your report clearly listed persons involved in the case, correct?
Correct.
And that police report is generated by computer software, correct? That's
Yeah.
particular to police reports?
Correct.
And that's one of the categories that you can fill in, correct?
Correct.
And would you agree with me that with regard to all of the persons involved listed in your police report, everybody's first name and last name was completely spelled out except for one? Would you agree with that?
I don't. I believe those names were entered by Detective Sergeant Lank.
Wasn't me.
But certainly the
Wasn't me. It wasn't me, Shaggy. It wasn't me. It wasn't me. It was Lank. It wasn't me. It wasn't me. It wasn't me. It I wonder whose name wasn't put in there first and last. Sergeant Lank was the friendly.
The report has your name on it, correct?
Correct.
So you would review the report before
Sure.
submitting it in your name, correct?
Correct.
So regardless of who entered or didn't enter, my question remains, which is that with regard to the persons involved listed in that report, everybody's name, first and last, is spelled out except for one, correct?
Correct.
Whose name was not spelled out completely?
I don't know.
Oh,
May I approach?
would it refresh your recollection to take a look at this report?
And I just
Thank
ask you to look at it silently and then look up at me when you're done.
Who do you think it is, you guys? I'm going to go with Jen.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Having reviewed that report, does that refresh your memory as to whose name was not completely spelled out?
Correct.
Who was that?
Brian Albert.
Brian Albert, the Boston police officer who is the homeowner. That's another great. I'm 100 for 100 on screen freezing today. Brian, his friend Brian Albert, the Boston police officer, the homeowner, on which another Boston police officer's body was found on the lawn of. Dun dun dun. Duty Ron is upset. Duty Ron getting upset. Duty Ron getting upset. George is getting upset. Seinfeld reference. Brian Albert's name was not spelled out. The only person out of everyone. Wow.
Did you omit Brian Albert's first name to mask the fact that he was involved?
No. No.
Do you know who Colin Albert is?
I know that he is Chris Albert's son.
And so therefore he'd be Brian Albert's nephew?
Yes.
Anywhere in your report, do you mention that Colin Albert was present at 34 Fairview the night of January 28th going into?
Hi, Jacqueline, in case you're confused, this is the cross. Jacqueline says, can't wait till the cross. This is the cross. I don't know if you're watching from behind and you are commenting while you're watching the from behind, but he knows who Colin Albert is. Oh, another excellent screen freeze. Wow. All right. Never let him see his sweat good. Never let him see his sweat goody.
January 29th? And so therefore he'd be Brian Albert's nephew?
Yes.
Anywhere in your report, do you mention that Colin Albert was present at 34 Fairview the night of January 28th going into January 29th?
No.
Now, would you agree with me that this report also lists home addresses for everyone in the persons involved section except for one person?
Can I see the sheet again, please? Thank you.
Sure. Keep looking at it. Keep looking at it.
Same, if I may approach.
Yes.
This is the same sheet that I sent you last time.
Thank you.
What am I talking about?
Brian Higgins.
Okay. Talking about? Thank you. And Sergeant, do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
What am I talking about?
Brian Higgins.
Okay. So with regard to Brian Higgins, his home address was not listed on there, correct?
Correct.
And what address was listed for Brian Higgins?
1492 Washington Street.
And what is significant about that address?
It's the town of Canton.
Oh, so, let's just put a material witness's address down as the town of Canton. 1492 Washington Street. Brian Higgins, we don't want his name anywhere on here. We don't want to know where he lives. It's not important. He's an ATF agent, but, and he was in the house, but, no big whoop. No big whoop. Higgin has a profa. Higgin has a profa. He does. Just when you think it can't get any better. I mean, any worse for them. Tutor says these supervisors are incompetent. I do not know about corrupt. Yeah, no, incompetent. I would agree with you. I back the blue 100%. I back the blue 100%. There are good and bad and not so good in every profession, and these guys are just incompetent. And that's what they want you to believe, and I think it's pretty easy to believe.
It's the Town of Canton Police Department, correct?
Correct.
Now, Brian Higgins was not an involved person because he was an investigator on the case, correct?
Correct.
He was not involved in this case in an official capacity, correct?
Correct.
You were, right?
Yes.
So listing the Canton Police Department as Sergeant Sean Goode's address would be appropriate. Would you agree?
Yes.
Why was Brian Higgins' address listed as the Canton Police Department?
I don't know.
But that is something that you kept in your report, correct?
Correct.
Gulp, says Barry.
Now, I also want to ask you something else about your police report. And I want to focus on whether it was altered after it was first submitted. Okay?
Yeah. It was.
If I can,
Hold on. Do you have your report with you?
I do not.
Okay. Do you have a copy for him, Ms. Giannetti?
A witness is not supposed to bring documents with them, Your Honor. Because if he did have a folded up police report in his pocket, that would be a bit improper. Did you bring a copy of it with you? Do you have a copy of it with you? Are you kidding me? Yeah.
That's okay.
help with it, and please look up at me when you're done.
Please take a look at it.
Does that appear to be your police report, sir?
Yes.
Now, and with the court's permission, I'd actually like the officer to have the report in front of him when I ask him these questions.
Okay. But nothing's going up on the screen, right?
Not yet.
Okay. So
Yeah.
approach before it does.
I will, I promise.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm directing your attention to the first page.
Okay.
You will agree with me that this report is submitted with regard to incident number 22-87-OF,
Correct.
and this is call number 22-449, correct?
Correct.
The date and time reported is listed as January 29th of 2022 at 06:08, correct?
Correct.
Which would be in military time 6:08 a.m.
Correct.
The report date and time is listed as January 29th of 2022.
Objection, Your Honor.
All right. So why don't we come to sidebar now?
Yeah, why don't we? Why don't we come on over now? Dude, I'm going to send you the link if you want to come on. Audio only. I don't know if you're at work. I don't know what you're doing. But I'm texting you the link in case you want to come in. Come on in. Join the party. Join the party. Maybe we can catch up a little bit.
Trying to do this at sidebar now. Okay, so the same three cautions. Please do not discuss this case with
Oh,
anyone.
we're going to
Don't
get to
do
hear an
any
argument.
independent research or investigation into this case. If you happen to see, hear, or read anything about this case, please disregard it and let us know. So we'll see you tomorrow morning. Tomorrow morning's a half day.
Tomorrow morning? You're letting them go for the day? They're done for the day. Oh, it's 4:30. I mean, it's 4:30 over here. Again, we can, are we going to read lips to see what this attorney is saying to his client? Are you kidding me? Thank you, Ms. Little, for standing in front of his and blocking their conversation. That's outrageous. That is outrageous. I am outraged.
All right, so someone needs to get Sergeant Lank for you. Okay, so the voir dire, I thought that we would have finished this earlier and I'd be able to give you more time, but I suggested 10, 15 minutes. Mr. Jackson tells me that's fine for him and the Commonwealth as well. So what I'd like to do is 10 to 15, 10 minutes would be great from each of you, and then I'll hear argument because it means now I'm keeping the staff longer than necessary.
Oh,
So
wah, wah, wah. You're only doing half days on Tuesday, Thursday, so wah, wah, wah. Dave the Pious says, I'm in Waukesha, where we have judges like
Yes.
Jennifer
Very
Darrow. This
getting
judge is a
judge
joke.
right
Thanks for your super chat, Dave. Crime Blog Weekly, thanks for your super chat, says, this is the best trial for a long time from London. Hello, London. London calling. They're going to voir dire Lank about all this stuff having to do with the Lapalito brothers and such. So this is going to be interesting. But they just left off talking about the altered police report. And I really, really, really wanted to hear that. Because if you have been following this case with me for all of these months, you know that initially at arraignment on February 1st or 2nd of 2022, David Yannetti was handed a police report by Mr. Lally. That was the police report, allegedly, from the incident in question. And then during discovery, defense exchanged another police report that was supposedly the same police report as the first. Same as the first, but a whole lot worse, because this time it wasn't the same, because what had happened was they changed Brian Albert's cell phone number to a different number and a different carrier. It didn't say that it was an amended report. It was just supposed to be the same report, and also attached some additional scene photos. They did not turn over with the first report. So there's that coming up for tomorrow, I guess.
Is the witness here?
Where's the witness? It's going to be the voir dire of Sergeant Lank, the friendly. Close family ties with the Alberts for many, many years, at least 20. Oh, here you know, it's so funny when you read about these people.
Please watch your step to the
You have an idea in your head of what they look like, and then it turns out to be nothing like what you thought they looked like.
Do you solemnly swear the evidence you give the court in the case now and hearing the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you.
Mayor Young,
please.
thank you. Thank you for joining us late in the afternoon, Sergeant Lank. I'm going to.
No, somebody said, what's a voir dire again? So I will take this opportunity to explain it to you. This is like an offer of proof. So if you've been watching this trial with me or following all of the hearings and such, the defense wants to introduce evidence that Sergeant Lank has been inserting himself in the Albert family business for at least 20 years. And about, I don't remember what year, maybe one of you guys can put it in the chat, what year it was that Sergeant Lank beat the crap out of a guy named Lapalito. I think his name's Alberto Lapalito, because he had gotten into a fight with one of the Albert brothers. There are 6 Albert brothers, Brian being one, Kevin being another, Chris being a third, and then there are 3 other brothers. He inserted himself into a Albert family fight outside of the bar that is now either CF McCarthy's or the Waterfall, beat the bejesus out of this guy, then, you know, sent him a ticket or got him in trouble for assaulting a police officer, but really he was the one who threw the beating. And then he and the Canton PD was sued, and then that case was settled. And so defense wants to bring all this stuff in and has the Lapalito brothers also under subpoena to come in if this guy doesn't testify truthfully about it. And the judge wasn't really sure if she was going to let that evidence in. So now they're going to offer some proof to question him as to what he's going to say about this, to decide whether or not the judge is going to allow this to be said in front of the jury. Okay. The jury's gone for the day. Reconvening tomorrow. This is Sergeant Lank, and this is his voir dire and or offer of proof. Okay? Here we go.
Direct your attention to your relationship with the Albert family and some of the members of the Albert family. Do you know who Tim Albert is?
Yes,
Do you know who Chris Albert is?
yes.
Do you know who
Could I
Brian
just
Albert?
Interrupt, I just need your name for
Oh.
the.
I'm so sorry. Can you please state your name and spell your name for the record, please?
Michael Lank, Lank.
Michael, common spelling?
Yes,
I'll start over.
Sure.
Do you know who Tim Albert is?
I do.
And do you know who Chris Albert is?
I do.
And do you know who Brian Albert is?
I do.
How do you know Tim Albert?
I know Tim Albert to be one of the younger brothers of the Albert family
How long have you known Tim?
since childhood.
What about Chris Albert?
Yes, I know Chris
How long have you known Chris?
since childhood.
And how would you describe your relationship with Chris Albert?
Chris and I were pretty good friends growing up, right into our 20s. Still friendly when I see him.
Still socialize with him?
No,
When did you last socialize with Chris Albert?
I couldn't tell you the last time I personally socialized with him. I've seen him at events, but Chris and I don't make arrangements to go out together.
What about Brian Albert?
No.
How would you describe your relationship with him?
Civil,
Civil.
Friendly?
exchange pleasantries when I see him. Hello.
But you're closer to Chris. Yes. Have you ever described yourself as being a longtime, quote unquote, drinking buddy with Chris?
No,
Would you describe yourself previously, in years past, as being a drinking buddy of Chris?
no,
Have you ever gone out for drinks with Chris?
not in years.
Ever?
Yes,
So you've socialized with him in circumstances in which y'all are drinking and imbibing.
Imbibe.
it's been many years, but yes.
Your relationship with Chris certainly goes all the way back to 2002.
Again, we were friendlier back then. Yes,
Right. Back in 2002 in August, while you were off duty, were you out either drinking with Chris or in some way at a restaurant or a bar with Chris?
Boop. I just want to rewind for the date. I didn't catch the date.
again, we were friendlier
I went to high school with a guy named Chris Albert.
back then. Yes,
Right. Back in 2002 in August, while you were off duty, were you out either drinking with Chris or in some way at a restaurant or a bar with Chris?
no,
Were you
August of 2002.
close in proximity to Chris when he was out drinking and at a bar?
no.
Was he at a restaurant?
I don't know where he was.
Were you at a bar?
I was.
At some point, did you realize that Chris was getting into some sort of a physical altercation with somebody else in a parking lot?
Yes,
Did you jump into a fist fight in order to protect Chris Albert?
Chris actually approached my vehicle and started to describe an altercation that had been in previously in the night.
When you say your vehicle, your personal vehicle?
Yes,
Okay, so you were off duty, is that right?
yes,
You've been drinking.
yes,
Nothing wrong with that, but just
Yes.
so happens that you've been drinking that afternoon.
yes.
Tim Albert was with Chris, correct?
Not when I saw him, no.
Okay. Ultimately, when you realized that Chris Albert was in some sort of fracas, some sort of fight or altercation, you activated yourself as a police officer at the time.
He wasn't in a fracas when he approached my vehicle. He approached my vehicle and stated that he had been in an altercation earlier in the night with one of the Lapalato brothers, and that during that altercation, threats were made against him and his family, and he was seeking advice because he knew as a police officer as to how he should go forward. And as I was telling him what to do, that's when a group of men started to walk down Washington Street towards Chris, and he said, "Oh no, here they come."
He was seeking advice. Do you believe that? Fracas has entered the chat. Fracas. That's your word of the day. A fracas erupted And he says, Sergeant Lank, that is, that in 2002 August, Chris Albert came up to him while he was in his car to tell him, to ask, seeking advice about something that happened between Chris Albert and the Lapalito brothers earlier in the evening. And he admits he had been drinking. He was off duty. So it's okay. The fracas happened. The fracas happened at the car. No, the fracas had happened earlier in the night. Okay. All right. They've cleaned up the 911 tape. All right. We'll get to that after this. Thank you. Thank you very much. Hang on a second. Oop.
So that would be Mark Lotto, correct?
Yes,
And his brother Alfred.
yes, Alfredo.
Alfredo, sorry. You got out of your car and
Everyone, let's say hello to Duty Ron. Duty Ron, how do I get your, how can I get it to show your, your like little avatar there?
You should be able to just add it to the stream.
When I add you to the stream, it doesn't come up with your picture on it. It just says Duty Ron is in the chat with audio only.
Maybe once you add it, it will it'll have the avatar. I don't know because I don't do this often.
I know, me neither.
So
well, here's Duty Ron, everyone. So say hello to Duty Ron. He's in with audio only. Hi. Are you enjoying this today?
Yeah, so I don't want to disrupt what you're doing, but I appreciate you allowing me to come on. And I can't see the chat because I'm driving home, but this is so important to me that I wanted to come on your stream and let people know that this is not indicative of professional police departments, at least the New York City Police Department. I could speak for myself. This would never be allowed to occur. And for the Canton Police Department to come into a courtroom, and obviously they have to testify, we hope, truthfully to what they did that day. It's an embarrassment to the trade. It's like a plumber coming in and screwing up your whole plumbing system in your house. They did everything the wrong way. And Ed Wallace, who's a crime scene expert, and everybody who knows me and you and watches both of our channels, is Ed has processed over 2,700 crime scenes, murders, all different types of crime scenes.
Yeah.
And you don't use these techniques. These techniques are just so unorthodox and so like blood in a plastic container in a red Solo cup. I mean, come on. Even when I was on patrol, I put it in your chat. My first night on patrol, we handled a homicide. I was, I jumped right into the pool, and I handled the homicide, albeit I didn't handle the intricate workings, the sergeants and the lieutenants and the captains. But you're listening to supervisors from Canton Police Department this lieutenant tell you that I ordered one of my guys to go and get a leaf blower.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah. Somebody said, you mean you don't use a leaf blower?
I mean, it's laughable. And like you said, Melanie, I've been listening on and off because I've been running around, my office today, but I had my Bluetooth headset on because I didn't want to miss this effery. I know you don't like the cursies, so I'm being nice.
No, because
yeah. So the effery that was going on, and I had to listen to it. So I was moving about my warehouse with my Bluetooth in, and people were like, "What are you listening to?" And I was like, "You don't want to know." But hearing you say, how could these people not be laughing inside the courtroom? I thought the same thing to myself, because if I was in there as a spectator, I wouldn't be able to hold the laughing back, because this is so ridiculously bizarre.
For him to say that a tent wouldn't be protocol in a blizzard and high wind?
When it comes to a police officer John O'Keefe, Boston police officer, dead on somebody's front lawn, and you're the responding lieutenant, who's the highest ranking official there, you're in charge until somebody of a higher rank shows up. And at that night, it didn't seem like anybody from a higher rank showed up. So he was in charge. You have to know what the F you're doing. And he didn't seem to have a clue. And for him to testify under oath that in his 20 some odd years as a Canton police executive, you did not have one crime scene in the snow. I mean, I think I processed in my first year a handful of crime scenes with snow in the projects and all the places where I work. So and we're in New York. They're so much further, well, not much, but still they're further north than us. They get more snow than we do. It's
Yeah.
ridiculous.
Tell everyone your experience. For those of you who don't know Duty Ron, I'll link his channel below so you can subscribe to him after this.
Yeah. So you were elevating me into the homicide unit. I supplemented many homicide cases, but I worked in the fugitive enforcement division. But when you are an investigator, this is investigation 101. You know that blood and any type of evidence that's liquid does not go in plastic. It goes in paper. And if they would have uh, if they would have scooped up or got some of that evidence and put it inside of a paper bag, I would have had a little bit more respect for them. But where is the crime scene, people? You have like I said, you have a Boston police officer. Granted, he's not from your department, but this is the same. Correct me if I'm wrong, Melanie, because you know a lot more about this case than me. But these are the same folks that traveled to New York on the day before or the day of this incident and paid respects to a New York police officer.
Right.
So,
wasn't it Officer Fernandez?
Yeah.
Was it Fernandez?
I don't have
January
the
of 2022.
dates.
I remember it was the last one before Jonathan Diller.
No, so there you go. They came down, they traveled to New York as we customarily do, and they paid respects to a New York City police officer who was killed in the line of duty. Now you have a Boston police officer laying dead on somebody's front lawn in Canton's jurisdiction, and you're not going to throw the kitchen sink at this and do it the right way. Shame on that lieutenant for not knowing that you don't use a freaking leaf blower. You know what I did? Ed's in Morocco. I texted Ed and I was like, Ed, riddle me this. And I knew the answer to it, but I needed to have the authority on it because, like you and I do, we always dot our I's and cross our T's. So I went to Ed knowing what he was going to say. And he sent me, I'll send you the screenshots of it. A bunch of emojis of covering your face and saying, I can't believe it.
They don't use NYPD doesn't use red Solo cups to collect blood evidence.
Never. Never.
They would not leave the crime scene unsecured from approximately 8:45 a.m. until the Massachusetts State Police CERT team got there at 6 p.m.
Until that crime scene is cleared by a competent authority, and that's what I would ask if I was the defense, or if I was, if I was hired by the defense, I would say, ask these executives, the lieutenant and the sergeant, who cleared that crime scene. Who gave the order to take that crime scene tape down and let people of any kind, any type of jagaloon to come running up and being a gawker and go on and say, oh, this is where that guy was found in the snow. This is where that police officer was found in the snow. Let me take a selfie. That could have happened. Who would have known? There was nobody there. They let everybody leave. Basically go home, have some coffee and warm yourselves up. This is done. Like, we would have that crime scene locked down for 24, 48 hours, whatever it took to get the right evidence. And in this case, John O'Keefe and his family, now it's about the victim's family. His family was let down. They have to be really, really sad right now. I'm sad for them myself. And I'm embarrassed. I'm embarrassed for all the good police officers and detectives and investigators that are out there. I spent 20 plus years dodging bullets for the citizens of the city of New York, and I did everything I could, whether it was a crackhead, whether it was a drug dealer, whether it was a prominent person. We processed crime scenes and we processed evidence collection the proper way. And I felt, I left the job feeling really good, and I still feel good about what I did. But I don't know how these guys, if they're still active and on the job, how they could feel good. And people in the chat were saying they should be fired. I would say this: firing a police officer with the unions is not as easy as you made this fatal mistake. You made this terrible error. They should be reprimanded, and whatever can be, whatever punishment that they could get, they should get for this, because they shouldn't be out on the street. And the citizens of Canton should be really worried, because if I lived there, I would seriously consider moving, because if there was a crime scene for a police officer, they screwed up this bad. Imagine with Joe Blow, Joe Q citizen, me, you, like you say, Karen Reed is me, Karen Reed is you. Like, okay, now we could go one step further and say, everybody that lives in Canton, this is what you have. If your home is broken into and God forbid you're beaten and killed, you got these buffoons coming there and doing this investigation. I'm outraged.
You are outraged. We are outraged. I made an emoji for that. Some of these guys got promotions after this.
That's disgusting. And the
Promotions.
promotions are by test, though, Melanie. So don't get caught up in that
Okay.
they
I
were
thought
patted on the
it was like
back.
a
They have
favor.
to take a test, a civil service test. So they're good test takers, but they suck at crime scene preservation, evidence preservation, crime scene, processing. These guys, you can have a couch, like an internet detective do a better job at this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So
thank you. Thank you for telling us that their crime scene investigation sucks, because I think we're all thinking, Ed, and everyone has wanted you to come on and talk about it. And I know that Ed is in Morocco, and people are
yeah,
saying Ed is probably hyperventilating somewhere.
he's freaking out. And listen, Ed and I'm going to have to do a show on this. I have to, just on this alone, have to do something on this with him or without him, because for me, I am, as a citizen now, I'm just like everybody else here. I'm not a police officer anymore. I'm retired, and I am outraged by this. And again, if this happened for a Boston cop, God, what do the citizens of Canton get? What is
Right.
what is a homeless person if he's found dead or murdered on the street? What is he going to get if they did this for a Boston cop?
Exactly. It's outrageous.
Yeah.
It's 100%. I'm so glad that you're joining me in the void of screaming about this case for months and months and months. And you know that I've been personally attacked, personally threatened. My kids have been personally like, this is insane what is going on with the people that are covering this case. And, for whatever reason, I know you guys couldn't cover it, but hopefully you will now.
Yeah. It's not that we couldn't cover it. It's just that it was being covered. I was following it pretty closely. And, I wanted to see what came out during the trial. I knew that there was a lot of people, everybody's divided on this, and it's either you're one way or the other, it seems, and there's no in between. So I'm watching and listening just like all your live chatters are. And I know you work so hard in fighting for, justice for Karen Reed, and, and for justice, not just for Karen, justice for the O'Keefe family. Let's find out who really was responsible for the murder of police officer John O'Keefe. When I see this, I now know in my mind, I listen to what people say, but now I know from today, I now know that there's no possible way they got to the bottom of who was in fact responsible for this. And we may never know now. We may never know.
Right, because it's too much time has passed, right?
Melanie, that's the sad part.
As an eyewitness.
It's the sad part about it. And I don't know how a jury can come forward after today and not have reasonable doubt, because that's all the defense has to prove is a little bit of doubt. The state, the Commonwealth, the burden's on them, and they are not going to be able to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Karen Reed murdered police officer John O'Keefe. Today was eye-opening for me, and I heard you talking about some of this stuff, but boy, to hear it from these guys' mouth, that lieutenant, and I tip my cap to him, because he didn't come up with all kinds of lies. He didn't waver. He was like, no, this is what I did. It was hard to hear it, but thank God he told the truth. And now to have a sergeant come on and say, yeah, I just mosey on home and got my leaf blower. That is, I've never, I'm 60 years old. I've never heard testimony like that. And I've testified at a lot of different trials and a lot of grand juries. And oh my God, like my head was spinning today.
It's frightening. Yeah, I think all of our heads are spinning. Thank you so much for joining me. I have some really heavy machinery outside my window right now. So I just want to get back to finish this proffer, but
okay.
Can you come on with me another day and talk some more?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'll come on with you anytime that I'm available. I'm driving to physical therapy right now. I'm not looking at the chat, and I love everybody in the chat, and thank you to everybody for supporting Melanie and myself. And, you go, girl. I'm behind you.
Here's one question before we move on. They didn't search inside the house. Would you have requested a warrant to search inside the house, or would you have thought it wasn't important to search inside the house?
Well, you heard the lieutenant. I'm going to give I'm going to give you what I would have done if I was a supervisor there. you heard what the lieutenant said. We didn't have probable cause, right? We didn't have
Mhm.
probable cause. But when you have a dead human being, and now listen, John O'Keefe, police officer John O'Keefe, he didn't get a fair shake with this investigation because he didn't even say he went and knocked on the door. I would have every one of my detectives, and if I didn't have detectives, I take my patrol officers. You heard him talk about I'm one of five. That sergeant said it's me and four other cops on the midnight tour or on the late tour. So I would have taken two of those four cops, two of them, secured a crime scene, because as you heard them say, the crime scene, there was nobody there. There was a lot of wind blowing. There was a lot of, rough weather, but I would have had them knocking on doors. Hey, did you see anything? Hey,
Mhm.
do you have a Ring video camera in your house? Hey, but knocking on that door, you don't need a warrant. And they didn't even do that,
Nope.
So a knock on the door does not require probable cause. I have knocked on literally a homicide in a building, a 15-story building. We'd have our lieutenants say, okay, give me 15 cops, and I want you guys to go floor to floor and knock on every door and ask these people if they heard or saw anything.
Yeah. He sent a civilian inside the house. He sent the sister of the homeowner to go inside
That's
the house.
ridiculous. That's ridiculous. You don't need a warrant, and especially the homeowner, right, was a Boston police officer.
Yes. Wouldn't they want to go in just to make sure that everyone in the house was okay?
Not even that. Hey, you're on duty 24/7. When we go end a tour and sign out, or however you go and end the tour at your respective precinct, you're a cop 24/7. Whether you're home sleeping or you're out with your family to a dinner. I mean, I always position myself so I could see the front of the establishment I'm in. My wife hates it, but I do it. I still do it to this day. So,
Yeah.
that homeowner, he should have been woken up by that lieutenant. Lieutenant of the Canton Police Department, I'm ordering you to come outside
Mhm.
or let me in. I want to
Right.
talk to you. And they didn't even
Unbelievable.
talk to him. I mean, it's not in the reports. They don't talk about it. That is a travesty of justice right there in itself, because it tells me that nobody cared. The upper, the upper executives took no initiative, and this guy, this lieutenant, as nice as he was on the stand, he's incompetent. He shouldn't be making decisions. He shouldn't be out in the field. And the sergeant, same thing for him. These are my opinions, and I'm sticking to them.
Right. I appreciate that. Thank you so much for coming on, even with audio, but I'm here all week. So anytime that you're around, please come and watch with me, because I feel validated today, Ron. I feel validated. I
Well,
thought I was
you're
crazy.
doing a fantastic job of covering
Thank
this
you.
case, and I'm here to give my insight. And again, these are my opinions as a professional who's walked this walk, and I could
Mhm.
talk the talk. I've been on arguably hundreds of murder scenes, and I've been on the scene of a murdered off-duty police officer. And you know what? The way it was handled when I was, in the 90s, off-duty police officer shot and killed on his motorcycle with his girlfriend. He was robbed. That whole area, there was a quarter-mile square radius, was locked down for 2 days.
2 days.
Why? Collecting evidence. They
Yep.
went foot by foot and checked every curb, every piece of the street, every piece of property where this perpetrator fled from, and they
Yeah.
wound up locking this guy up. But they locked that crime scene down for over 2 days.
Yeah.
And nobody could go, and traffic was backed up. It was right on Pennsylvania Avenue off the Belt Parkway. I'll never forget it. Officer Rudolph, and
Wow.
that they did a fantastic job for his family. His mom, I met her. She came out to the scene, and she knew that the New York City Police Department, New York's finest, the greatest detectives in the world, they went out and did a fantastic job. And within 2 additional days, within 4 days, the perpetrator was locked up.
Yeah. That's insane.
Anyways, I'll leave you with that. I know you got a lot to get to. Thank you for having me. I love you,
Oh,
and I'll
thank you
talk to you
so
soon.
much. Thanks so much for coming on. I appreciate you. All right.
All right.
We'll
Take
see
care.
you
Bye,
soon.
everybody in the chat. Thank you.
Bye, Duty Ron.
Bye.
All right. Thank you. Duty Ron just had shoulder surgery, so he's in recovery right now. He's going to physical therapy, and that was awesome. And we've all wanted to hear his opinion on this for a very long time. So I'm glad that we got to have him on for the short time that we did. And hopefully he'll come back and talk again soon. But now we're going back to the Norfolk Superior Court for the remainder of the proffer or voir dire of Sergeant Lank, who is testifying outside the presence of the jury with regard to the Lapalato brothers and the incident that occurred in 2002 that involved one of the other Albert brothers, Chris Albert. Tuning back into that. And here we go.
Approach the other men.
Yes.
You also called for a Canton police backup.
I brought my attention to the restaurant owner and a bartender who had walked out into the street, and I yelled for them to call the Canton police.
Canton police did in fact arrive, correct?
They did.
Isn't it true that after you got involved and Canton police arrived, you then instructed some of your colleague police officers to handcuff Alfredo?
I can't recall.
Isn't it true that after Alfredo was handcuffed and for all intents and purposes physically incapacitated, you then approached Mark Lapalato?
Marco and Alfredo Lapalato. That's the names of the brothers who sued Canton PD and I guess the town of Canton all these years ago in 2002. And the more he can't recall, the better, because that's when his deposition testimony is going to be able to be used to impeach him.
No.
You got to do a
Wait,
fight.
I want to hear that question
You
again,
then
sir.
instructed some of your colleague police officers to handcuff Alfredo.
I can't recall.
Isn't it true that after Alfredo was handcuffed and for all intents and purposes physically incapacitated, you then approached Mark Lapalato?
No.
You got into a
Oh,
fight with
no.
Mark Lapalato, don't you?
Yes.
You punched him in the face?
At one point after he had struck me, yes.
Oh.
So your story is he struck you first and then you punched him.
Yes.
His story, of course, is you punched him first.
I don't know what his story is.
Well, you were sued in federal court and he told you his story in that lawsuit, correct?
So I actually have a question. The criminal case was adjudicated. The civil case, I did sign a non-disclosure, so I'm not sure if I can speak on that.
I will never ask you what the nature of any settlement within that case was. Just the fact that you were sued in a public document, which a federal lawsuit is a public document, you were sued in federal court over this incident that I'm talking about, correct?
Yes,
And ultimately it was settled. I'll never ask you what the terms of the settlement are. 'Cause that's
it was
confidential.
settled, yes.
Okay. Ultimately, you said that the criminal case was adjudicated. We'll get to that in just a second. Did you testify at that criminal case?
I did.
All right. I want to sort of tailor this a little bit because we're on a little bit of a time crunch and I want to be sensitive to the court's time and your time. The allegation that Mark Lapalato made against you is that you punched him, took him to the ground, continued to beat him, and bit him to the point of drawing blood, correct?
I believe that was his allegation.
Bit him. He bit him. He bit a man, drawing blood.
Yes.
Then indicated that once the police officers that were there pulled you off of him, you then turned and walked over to Alfredo while he was still incapacitated, meaning physically handcuffed, and spat in his face.
I believe that was his allegation, yes.
Ultimately, both men, after this altercation, were allowed to leave the location, correct?
I believe one fled and the other one was allowed to leave, yes.
Okay. You're telling me now that Mark Lapalato punched you first, a police officer, correct?
Yes.
And are you aware of any circumstance in which an individual would be able to punch a police officer on duty or off duty in the presence of other police officers and just be released? That wouldn't happen, would it?
I don't believe the other police officers were on scene when the fight initiated.
Did you tell them that you got punched?
I don't recall.
They certainly let Mark go, correct?
Mark fled.
Okay. And then
Alfredo was released.
so the next day, Mark and Alfredo showed up at Canton PD to file a complaint against you and some of the other police officers that were involved, correct?
That's what I was told. I wasn't there.
You didn't file a report for assault, or battery, or anything like that, correct?
I spoke with my sergeant that night and he said that I could do the report when I came back in on my next day of work.
My question is, on that night, did you file a report?
No,
The next day, did you file a report?
I don't recall if it was 1 or 2 days later.
It's actually 3 days later, wasn't it?
I'm not sure.
Does it sound like that's in the time frame? It probably was about 3 days later.
I honestly couldn't tell you. It's 22 years ago. I'm not really sure.
But
Oh.
between the time this fight happened and you filed a report, Mark Lopolito and his brother Alfredo came into Canton PD and asked to swear out a complaint against you and fellow officers, correct?
I believe so.
And they were told to go away on that day.
I couldn't speak to that.
By the time they came back to file the complaint, then police reports had been written, right?
I don't know.
Once those police reports were written, after they indicated that they wanted to file a complaint, ultimately charges were brought against them, correct?
Again, ultimately charges were brought. I don't know the exact timeline.
After charges had been brought, and both brothers ended up having to go to court and defend themselves, you ran into both brothers at a mobile gas station.
Yes.
You confronted both brothers, correct?
No.
You approached both brothers.
No.
Isn't it true that you walked up and said, "How you doing?" to the two guys? And one of them responded, "Not so good. You attacked me and now I've got to go to court."
No,
That conversation?
I believe they initiated the conversation with me.
Oh.
Did you say, "How are you doing?"
Something to that nature.
And did they respond something to the effect of, "I'm not doing so good because you attacked me and now I've got to defend myself in court"?
I don't recall exactly what they said in response.
And then, based on that interaction, you arrested them for witness intimidation, correct?
Well, there was further interaction. It wasn't just the response to "how are you doing?" They made threats and they were ultimately arrested. Yes.
They made threats.
So your claim now is that they made threats against you, a sitting police officer at the time, a working police officer.
Yes.
Okay. And you reported that threat to the DA's office.
Yes.
And charges were brought against them. I'm sorry. A report was brought against them for that witness intimidation, correct?
Correct.
Ultimately, with regard to the assault charges for which they were arrested and tried, they were found not guilty in a public adjudication, criminal case, correct?
Correct.
And the DA's office threw out the witness intimidation charges because they were meritless. Isn't that right?
The charges were thrown out.
And all of this history that we've just talked about came on the heels of you assisting Chris and Tim Albert in a fight they said they had been in earlier in the evening. Is that right?
No.
You just told us that the reason you got involved in this melee, this fight to begin with, was because Chris Albert approached you and said, "I was in a fight with some guys earlier tonight, and here they come."
Yes. And you just said that he was with Tim Albert. I never saw Tim Albert that night.
My mistake. Let's just leave it at Chris.
He was with his fiance.
Okay. So all of this situation emanated from you coming to the aid of Chris Albert, your friend, longtime childhood friend, correct?
It had nothing to do with it being Chris Albert.
Isn't it true that it had everything to do with it being Chris Albert?
No.
So just a regular random guy off the street, you would have conducted yourself the exact same way.
Absolutely.
When you're off duty after having a couple of beers at whatever bar that was, that is now CF McCarthy's or the Waterfall. Really? Any stranger that comes up to your car that knows you're a cop, you're just gonna beat him up because some stranger told you that some guy had a fight with him and he didn't know what to do, and you're gonna go beat up that other guy? Really? Do you expect the jury to believe that? Give me a lies. Yeah, Thompson twins in the chat. Really? Okay, he's digging himself in a hole now. I need some shovels and some lies. And this better come in, because now the Lapalato brothers need to come in and talk about what about he just said is not really true. The melee, the fracas.
Isn't it true that what you actually did, Sergeant Lank, in that particular circumstance, was you came to the aid of a friend and you used your position as a police officer to further that assistance and that protection?
No.
You've got a friend.
That's all I have, Your Honor.
Okay, Mr. Lally?
Thank you, Your Honor.
So whatever happened between Christopher Albert and these brothers on that particular evening, you weren't present for that?
No.
And your testimony that Tim Albert wasn't present at any point in time when you were there either, correct?
No.
Now, with regard to Tim Albert, what, if any, other involvement have you had with him as far as through your official duties as a police officer?
I was involved in an investigation where we had to take out charges against Tim Albert.
So you've been involved in an investigation where charges were actually taken out against a member of the Albert family, correct?
Correct.
And do you recall roundabout when that was?
I believe it was 2012.
Do you recall who, if anyone, from your department was working with you on that investigation?
It would have been Officer Goode.
Okay, hold on. So he was investigating other charges against another Albert in 2012. Let's take that back a second, shall we? Because, you know, he's going to try and prove that he's not a friendly to the Alberts because he actually did prosecute the Alberts with Sergeant Goode back in 2012. As we're all sitting on the edge of our seats. Does anybody know what this is about? This is new info to me.
Present at any point in time when you were there either, correct?
No.
Now, with regard to Tim Albert, what, if any,
Tim.
other involvement have you had with him as far as through your official duties as a police officer?
I was involved in an investigation where we had to take out charges against Tim Albert.
We had to.
So you've been involved in an investigation where charges were actually taken out against a member of the Albert family.
We had to.
Correct.
And do you recall roundabout when that was?
I believe it was 2012.
Do you recall who, if anyone, from your department was working with you on that investigation?
It would have been Officer Goode at the time.
And that's now Sergeant Sean Goode, is that correct?
That's correct.
Same Sean Goode involved in this case, correct?
Correct.
Now, with regard to the federal suit that was brought, that was settled, correct?
That's correct.
There was no disposition on it, no finding of liability or anything of the like.
Correct.
Wait.
Now,
No finding of liability on the 2002 Lapolito case? Yeah, because they settled the case. They settled the case.
It would have been Officer Goode at the time.
and that's now Sergeant Sean Goode, is that correct?
That's correct.
Same Sean Goode involved in this case, correct?
Correct.
Now, with regard to the federal suit that was brought, that was settled, correct?
That's correct.
Was
There was no
settled.
disposition on it, no finding of liability or anything.
No finding of liability because you don't settle a case that you think you can win. Yeah, it didn't get to verdict. It didn't get to a civil jury who would have decided whether there was a liability or no liability because they settled the case because you bit a guy.
Thing of the like.
Correct.
Now, with respect to Brian, how would you describe your relationship with him?
Again, civil.
The two of you friends?
Could you repeat that, please?
Are the two of you friends?
No.
Do you socialize with Brian Albert? Have you at any point?
I've been at events where Brian is at, and we will say hello, but that's pretty much the extent of it.
Have you ever socialized with Brian Albert, just the two of you?
No.
You ever been to his house or inside his house?
No.
Now, with regard to, other than that day of January 29th, 2022, correct?
Correct.
You and Brian Albert, do you get along?
Say that again?
I said, he and Brian Albert, do they get along?
Do you get along with Brian Albert?
We have had some disagreements, I'd say, in the past, but we're
Oh,
civil. We get along.
I want to know about the
Enough to say hello.
disagreements.
Anything to do with your response, your interviews, or anything to do with January 29th, 2022, have anything to do with the Albert family or Brian Albert or Christopher Albert or anything to do with the Alberts whatsoever?
No.
That didn't change what you were doing, how you were doing it, or how you conducted yourself in this investigation. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Nothing further.
Why don't we let the jury decide?
I have one slight area to cover with the court's permission.
Okay.
Concerning Tim Albert and this issue, or the investigation where charges were brought against Tim Albert, that was a circumstance in which Tim Albert, in broad daylight, slammed into a parked car belonging to a woman and then fled the scene, correct?
No.
Didn't you follow a trail of transmission fluid or something to find where he had gone?
I did.
And he fled directly to 34 Fairview, correct?
Correct.
He didn't live there. He went to his brother's house. Brian,
No, that's not correct.
he lived there at the time?
Yes.
Okay, so you follow the trail of whatever it is, fluid trail, all the way to where Tim Albert had fled to, and you basically had no choice. He had just slammed into the back of a car and then fled the scene. Isn't that right?
Can you make this up?
I concluded my investigation by locating the vehicle that had heavy damage.
Right, the vehicle that he hit.
His vehicle.
His vehicle had heavy damage, but so did the vehicle that he hit, correct?
So what you had said a minute ago that he hit a parked car. That's incorrect.
Oh, he hit a moving car.
It was a vehicle that was, I believe it was stopped at a light. It wasn't a parked car. It was a vehicle that was stopped.
Okay. Irrespective of whether the engine was running or parked or not, he hit a car
Yes.
with a woman in it, fled the scene, then you find him trying to hide out at 34 Fairview, correct?
He had parked the car at 34 Fairview.
And you didn't have much choice. I mean, there you have it. The evidence is right in front of you. You can't really cover that one up, right?
I would say I did my
Objection,
job.
Your Honor. Move to strike.
So this is Voir, dear. Could you answer the question, please?
I would say I did my job.
Okay. Did you engage in any kind of a DUI investigation?
We spoke with him.
Oh,
Give him FSTs?
I don't recall if I did. I know I didn't. I don't recall if Officer Goode did.
Did you give him a breathalyzer?
I did not.
Did you ask him for a blood test?
I did not.
So no DUI investigation was really undertaken, correct?
Again, I can't recall what Officer Goode did, but I was there.
But you didn't do it. You didn't do what I just suggested, a full-blown DUI investigation, even though he hit another car and then fled the scene.
We spoke with him and he gave an explanation.
can you give an
That
explanation?
coming from Tim Albert was, I'm really sorry, I panicked, right?
It was something to that nature.
And he turned around, well, I'll just cut to the chase. Y'all ended up charging him with a misdemeanor, correct?
I believe so.
And he was given diversion
I don't know.
and his record was wiped clean.
I don't know.
That's all I have.
All right.
All right.
Thank you, Sergeant. You can step down, sir.
So this is worse than
Okay,
we even
Mr.
thought.
Jackson.
When you didn't think it could get any worse, not only is Lank pulling a friendly for the Lapalito brothers incident back in 2002, but also another friendly for Tim Albert. For Tim Albert in, what did they say, 2012? When he slammed into a woman at a red light, fled the scene, and then he followed the trail of transmission fluid because he kind of had to, all the way to 34 Fairview. Gave him a misdemeanor, didn't investigate any sort of DUI, tried to push it off on Lank, on Sergeant Goode, that like it was his problem, didn't do any testing or anything, or even pursue any sort of DUI investigation. And so it's not just Chris Albert or Kevin Albert, whoever the one was with the Lapalito brothers, because I have so many notes here, I can't even go back, but it's Tim Albert too. So there's that. I can't wait to hear this argument. And if she doesn't let this in, I'm gonna explode.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'll be very brief. I spoke about the Aguiar case a couple of days ago, and I think it's still attendant to our conversation today or discussion today. That case stands for the proposition that it doesn't matter if the evidence reveals something other than something that's otherwise inadmissible, as long as the material elaborates on or establishes that there could be some sort of bias or prejudice. There doesn't have to be a bias or prejudice. I don't have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt or to clear and convincing evidence that there's a bias or prejudice. But if the evidence suggests that there could be bias or prejudice, that is proper fodder for the jury to consider, and that's what we're asking. In this case, Sergeant Lank's willingness to activate himself as an officer, get involved with Chris Albert, although it was in 2002, and I know that that's something that Mr. Lally is going to say, and he's going to harp on, this was so long ago, that actually cuts against the Commonwealth case.
Yeah.
That shows how long these folks have been involved with each other and how deep their relationships run.
Yeah.
For him to sort of deputize himself in that situation in order to help out his longtime friend, whom he socializes with, drinks with, grew up with, establishes a bias and a prejudice, in this case against Miss Reed, and in favor of the Alberts.
No spoilers.
It's not like he had a tangential part to play in this, a role to play in this investigation. He was the very first officer to walk in that front door. He absolutely knew what he was going to find when he walked in the front door, which was the homeowners and possibly other witnesses. He engaged in a interview or a series of interviews that were not recorded. I have no idea what was said. The jurors are never going to find out exactly what was said other than to take his word for it. The jurors have to be able to weigh and balance his credibility against an officer that, for instance, even like Sergeant Goode, for instance, who seems to come across far more unbiased, just sort of a straight shooter. Sergeant Lank is not that person. He never should have walked in that front door. He should have said to his supervisors, I have a relationship with the Albert family. I've known these folks for too long. I grew up with his brother or brothers. I've known them my whole life. I'm probably not the right person to make the decisions about this investigation. And unless and until the jurors know that and can weigh and balance it, they can toss it out if they want to, or they can adopt it if they want to.
So
if they need to be able to hear the evidence.
I don't want to hear her talk just yet. I'm not ready for it yet. Because Shelley says every 10 years on the twos, they get a favor from Lank, 2002, 2012, and 2022. If you're into numerology, that might mean something. No spoilers. We're behind because Duty Ron joined for a bit.
So I have a question for you. So the part about the complaint at the station
Yes.
and being turned away, who are you going to get that in from other than the Lapalito brothers, which puts us a little far afield? So he didn't adopt it or said, I
Well,
don't know, or that's what I've
That's
heard.
too bad
So
then.
the Lopalito brothers, I think.
I know,
would
but
be-
that's so far removed now.
I disagree. I think they're the ones that are closest to the situation. So we would ask who's better to tell the jurors.
Can we please
if they
not put any
walked in-
spoilers in the
I
chat?
can get the
Thanks.
police report. I can tell the court when it's dated. It's dated September 2nd or September 3rd, and the Lopalitos walked in on August 31st to make the complaint.
No, I understand because you've outlined it, or
Right.
Ms. Little outlined it, which is very helpful. I don't disagree that some of this is admissible. I just have to figure out how you intend to get it in, because I have to be concerned about if it's a mini trial within a trial, and we're trying to avoid that.
I think
Not what it is.
Hold on. If he were to testify as he did, that's what I understand. And the Commonwealth didn't object to that. That seems admissible to me.
I would probably seek to do it with the court's permission through two pieces of evidence. One would be Mark or Alfredo, and I don't think I would use both of them.
You would not.
I would not. Okay, fair enough. I would seek to ask Mark to join us. He would testify to the altercation. He would testify to the complaint, and then I would seek to either get a stipulation to the date of the police reports. I don't even need the police reports in. If I can't get a stipulation, then I probably would just ask the court to be able to establish that the police report is a business record. Take
So
it for
I would like to see those police reports tonight before I leave, okay?
if I have them.
We'd have to get them.
Right. I will do my best to get them to the court. I can't get them to the court tonight. We don't have them.
Okay.
So I'll start working on that immediately.
All right. Anything else?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, Mr. Lally?
Your Honor, I would submit that defendant has a minutes burn. There is no actual relevancy to any of this, and it is essentially a trial within a trial at this point. bringing in other civilian witnesses to talk about an incident which happened 22 years ago to
So
involving.
let's forget about bringing in the civilian witnesses. How about what we heard as to what Sergeant Lank would testify to?
As to what Sergeant Lank would testify to is a single incident in which he did not witness anything to do with the Albert brothers. Christopher Albert was never at 34 Fairview Road on January 28th or until much, much later in the day of January 29th, and certainly not at the same time that Sergeant Lank was.
Are you testifying now for Christopher Albert? Because we haven't heard his testimony. Okay. So you saying that Christopher Albert wasn't there, you've seen the brigade. You've seen the public brigade come out with photographs of Katie McLaughlin and Caitlin Albert together after they believe that Katie McLaughlin minimized their relationship and or lied about it on the stand. You've seen the deluge of photographs that have come out. You're really going to stand there and say that Chris Albert wasn't there that night because now you're spewing evidence to the judge? He hasn't even testified yet. And if I recall, in Chris Albert's statement that he gave right away to Proctor or whoever, he says he followed back to 34 Fairview. So you might want to dial that back a notch, Mr. Lally.
I think counsel far overestimates what Sergeant Lank's involvement in this particular investigation was. He shows up on scene. He assists with the other officers, Lieutenant Gallagher and Sergeant Goode, that you've already heard from. And with respect to, he takes a couple of initial statements, who all those witnesses then subsequently talked to troopers from the state police, testified grand jury, multiple grand juries.
Yeah.
And will we all be testifying as witnesses in this case? So any purported bias from an incident from 22 years ago involving a brother who wasn't even present at the home on the night in question does nothing but confuse the jury as to what the issues are, and creating this sort of...
You know who's confusing the jury, Lally? You. You with your 76 characters, 76 people that you mentioned in your opening statement. The only one confusing the jury here is you. That was the worst opening statement in the histories of opening statements, and not just by my estimation, by every other person that I have seen cover this on YouTube so far. Because there's a lot of law tubers covering it now. And guess what? The only one confusing the jury in this case is you. Wow.
Bias out of thin cloth that has no basis whatsoever in the facts of this case.
Okay, so I disagree with you. I don't know yet. I want to see those police reports. I don't know yet what I'm going to allow in, but I disagree that it has nothing to do. If it weren't involving the Alberts, then under the grand jury case, the decision by Justice Gantz, Chief Justice Gantz at the time, it wouldn't come in, but it does. So it comes in for different purposes or different reasons. So I'd like those reports tonight, or certainly by tomorrow morning before we come out.
We'll do our best.
Okay. All right. So we'll figure this out tomorrow morning.
So, okay.
All
So
right,
she's
thank you very
ruling
much.
on it. So she's not going to figure it out until tomorrow morning. Yeah, that was a whole train wreck. Okay. So we don't know if it's coming in or not. We don't know nothing about nothing. It wasn't me, Shaggy. It wasn't me. Okay. My head is spinning. Anybody else? Anyone else over here got a spinning head going on besides that spinning fan? Lisa, thank you so much. Says, I love your passion for this case. It's admirable. Thank you. Some people call it something else, but thank you so much, Nurse Jones. I appreciate you so much as well. Nurse Jones says, is this the most bizarre trial ever, or is this common practice? No, it's pretty bizarre. She says, it's really scary. Thanks for helping me to understand this craziness. This craziness. I don't know how anybody could spin this to say that this is good for the Commonwealth, what happened today. And Stacy, thanks for your Cash App, says, am I on glue? Because this is a bad trip. This is a bad trip, my friends. Not a great trip. This is insane. Anon, please. Thank you, Anon, please, very much as well for your contribution. Microdots did clean up the audio. If you guys want to hear that, we can play it. Thank you on top for the super sticker. Some guy with cancer. I'm sorry about that, but thank you for your super sticker. Spoiler, Canton PD sucks. Dave the Pious, thank you for your super chat. He says, I keep thinking, do you have Brian Albert in a can? God, I'm old. Put it in the comments for me today what you think the craziest part of today was, aside from the leaf blower and all of this craziness that we've heard about. I want to see if we can play this Microdots audio. They say that it's too low quality to enhance clearly. This is the 911 call that we heard earlier from Jen McCabe's 911 call. However, we believe that we were able to transcribe it correctly, I believe is what it says. So let's take a listen to this, you guys, okay? It was chilling, that 911 call, and we tried to listen to it a couple of times. We even tried to slow the speed down, but we couldn't. So thank you to Microdots. If you're not already subscribed to them on YouTube, go do it. Here we go.
Okay, please, good.
Hi, my name is Karen. I'm calling because my friend's boyfriend did not come home last night. We were at Waterfall, and now she is calling me hysterical.
Okay, I'm just going to take that back a second. This is Carrie's call that Carrie made to Canton PD when she was looking for John. So this is Carrie Roberts' call to Canton PD. I'm going to rewind that because I thought it was Jen McCabe's call. It's not. It's Carrie's. Here we go.
Okay, please, good.
Hi, my name is Karen. I'm calling because my friend's boyfriend did not come home last night. We were at Waterfall, and now she is calling me hysterical because she doesn't know where he is. You didn't touch anybody outside the name of John O'Keefe, did you?
John O'Keefe.
Yeah, he's about to come and we'll be on set, so.
No.
And he probably another guy and tapped at his own house, I don't know, but.
Yeah, no, we didn't want anybody else or anything like that. And where does he live?
He lives on Meadow, down in Seven.
He lives on Meadow, off Pleasant. Okay, and where is the wife home? You said his girlfriend?
His girlfriend, yeah, they were out having drinks, and then she left, and expected him to come home at some point, and he never did.
Yeah.
And so, I said to her, you know, my husband had been out with her earlier in life, but then he obviously came home, and he had custody with me to nephew from this year, passed away.
Okay.
And so she's home with me to have, but they're old enough to be home, and so she's nervous because she never knew how to do.
Yeah.
So she's like, I feel like something happened, and I said, okay. Well, so probably at hospital, and nobody got him. I personally think he someone probably picked him up in the back, I don't know.
Yeah, where, did he drive last night?
No.
No. Okay. Again, it's more, it would be driven by you. She would have to, call in a government patient, and talk to us, but right now, it's more, he's just at home, saying this conference, sometimes we'll have with him.
No, that's why. That's because she did use probably me. That's kind of why she's more freaking out. So I figured, I called the hospital, I said, call Canton police just to make sure, if they come on, they can, police officers, anyone, that's people, if anybody starts to come up.
Yeah.
We take it off.
Okay.
Apparently, I was going to the party,
Yeah, no.
no.
Unfortunately, I wasn't there, I was stuck here, but we haven't get any calls, anything like that, nobody was arrested or anything like that, alrighty.
All righty.
Well, thank you.
No problem, good luck.
Thank you, bye-bye.
Okay, so that's the cleaned up audio from Carrie's call. That's kind of interesting. I don't know if they've had the opportunity yet to clean up the audio on Jen's call. Does anybody know about that? I don't see it up yet, so maybe they're going to do work on that later tonight. This is insane. Thanks, Crafty, for becoming a new member. And when I asked everyone to tell me what they thought their craziest part of the day was, I've starred a whole bunch of answers here. Thanks, Mike Dorado, for your $5 super chat. I'm always replay. I just want to say thank you. You are so welcome. I am so happy that I'm not doing this by myself and yelling into a closet, and I have all of you here with me. Curiouser and Curiouser, thanks for your super sticker. So here we go with the craziest parts of the day for all of you. Snowcat Tish says, Katie perjuring herself and the flipping evidence collection. Great Dane Mom says, cups in a grocery store bag. Freeloading Woodchuck says, having no training on how to investigate. Curtis Mitchell says, craziest moment, Bev smiling at the jury. That's the first time we've seen that in a long time, or maybe ever. This trial's only been going on for a week and it feels like a month. Macbeth, thank you for your super sticker. Linda Vergata, wow, what a day it's been. Crazy. Snuggie says, the Solo cups in the Stop and Shop bag was it for me. D-Daughter says, red Solo cups. Indie Girl says, moseying the leaf blower, snow Solo cups, etc., etc., etc. Nobody yet is talking about the taillight. For Unit, it was the Stop and Shop bag. For Jacqueline Shea, also the Stop and Shop brown bags. For Broken Baker, hello, I think Denmark, right? The guy sticking his glove in the blood at the scene was pretty weird. Yeah. Donna Ashton says, admission that the Canton PD shattered the taillight when trying to remove it. That was it for me too. Because we kind of knew already, if you've been following the case, we knew about the red Solo cups. We didn't know about the Stop and Shop bag. That was a little out there. We knew about the leaf blower. We did not know that when they removed the taillight, it shattered into 45 pieces. And that's what he said. That's what I got from his testimony anyway. I'm sure other people will try and spin it another way. Jacqueline Shea, the Stop and Shop bags that we used as evidence bed, the red Solo cups, shall I continue? Cassandra says, seeing the blood sitting right next to the car, that was weird. And the cross-contamination questions about that. For 7, it was the Stop and Shop bag too. Freeloader Woodchuck says, Karen's smile when Gallagher mentioned the taillight. Wow. Crafty, thanks for becoming a new member. And Dr. Abby Normal, thanks for becoming a new member. And Cheryl Kelleher, thanks for the $10 and says, great. What a wow day. Yeah. You can't make this up. This is real life, you guys. And my credulity is strained. I don't know about yours. We'll be back in the morning to watch the trial again tomorrow at 9 a.m. I'll put it up a little bit later. I have 2 streams today. We did one in the morning and one in the afternoon. So if you haven't watched the morning, go back and watch that one too. Give it a like, give it a comment, share it out there, help the algorithm. Please hit the like while you're here, subscribe, and hit the bell so that you will know all times when I go live, which will be again tomorrow morning for the half day tomorrow, 9 to 1, because this court only works Tuesdays and Thursday half days. We learned a lot about the relationships between these investigators and how well they knew the Alberts. And you didn't think it was true, but you've heard it from the witnesses on the stand who swore to tell the truth. So there's that. It's just not just me making up things and, as such like that. My friends, I don't even know what to say except thank you to my moderators for keeping the chat classy as always. I know it is not always easy when we discuss the Karen Read case. I know. And I see you and I appreciate you so, so, so very much for giving people a safe place to come and watch this coverage with me. And my viewers, my replay viewers, channel members, love all of you guys so very much. Go subscribe to Duty Ron. Go subscribe to Microdots. Brandy Churchwell, who was here with me the other day. And where is Chloe? We still don't know. We're going to find out. But remember, my friends, please stay safe out there and be cool, be kind, be classy, because it is not hard. I promise you, it is really, really, really not hard. Thank you, my friends. Peace out until tomorrow morning. Good night, everyone.